My father's laughter echoed through the conference room as he slid the papers across the mahogany table. "Here's your inheritance, Aubrey, our failing company. Your sister Madison gets everything else." The contempt in his voice cut deeper than any blade. As their business partners shuffled uncomfortably, I stood up slowly. "Before we proceed, someone needs to join this meeting." The door opened and my assistant announced, "The CEO of Apex Industries." I walked to the door, turned back, and watched Dad's signing pen clatter to the floor. The conference room fell silent as I returned to my seat, savoring the shock on my father's face. To understand how we arrived at this moment, I need to take you back through the 32 years that led me here. My parents, Robert and Patricia Whitfield, built Whitfield Manufacturing from a small garage operation into a regional powerhouse. They started with nothing but determination and a loan from my maternal grandfather, crafting precision parts for the automotive industry. Growing up, our dinner table conversations revolved around supply chains, quarterly reports, and production efficiency. But these discussions had a clear audience of one, my older sister, Madison. She was the chosen heir from the moment she could hold a wrench. By age 10, Madison spent summers in the factory learning machinery. By 15, she was shadowing executives. By 18, she enrolled in MIT for mechanical engineering, following the path our parents had meticulously laid out. I took a different route. Where Madison saw beauty in blueprints, I found passion in understanding market psychology and strategic growth. When I announced my acceptance to Wharton for business administration, my father's disappointment was palpable. "Business school is for people who can't actually build anything," he declared over pot roast one Sunday. "Real success comes from understanding the product, not pushing papers." My mother's response was subtler but equally dismissive. "That's wonderful, dear," she said, patting my hand like I'd announced plans to study interpretive dance. "Maybe you'll meet a nice young man there, someone who can provide stability." The implication was clear: Madison would inherit the empire and I would marry into comfort. Throughout college, I excelled in courses on corporate strategy, market disruption, and organizational behavior. My professors praised my insights on modernizing traditional industries. But when I shared these ideas during holiday visits, my father would wave them away. "Consultants and their fancy theories," he'd scoff. "We've done fine for 3 decades without disrupting anything." Madison tried to bridge the gap, bless her heart. Aubrey's ideas about automation could really help. She'd venture during one Christmas dinner, but Dad would redirect the conversation to Madison's internship at Tesla, his chest swelling with pride. Now that's real experience, working with the best engineers in the world, not sitting in classrooms theorizing. The comparisons were constant. Madison's engagement announcement at 24 sparked a celebration that lasted weeks. When I graduated summa cum laude at 22, I received a card and a reminder that grades don't matter in the real world. Madison's first published research paper was framed in Dad's office. My case study on supply chain optimization, which won a national competition, was met with, "Very nice. Have you given any thought to what you'll actually do for work?" I found an internship at Deloitte's Strategy Consulting Division working with manufacturing clients. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my family dismissed my chosen field, I was advising companies just like theirs on survival tactics in an evolving market. That's when I first encountered Whitfield Manufacturing's name in a different context. One of our senior partners, Gregory Marsh, mentioned them during a team meeting. "Classic case of generational stagnation," he said, unaware of my connection. "Refusing to modernize hemorrhaging talent, losing market share to nimbler competitors. They've hired us to assess their largest client relationship." My stomach dropped. Our biggest client was considering leaving. This accounted for 40% of our revenue. I volunteered for the assessment team, carefully omitting my last name from internal communications. What I discovered over the next 3 months changed everything. The client, Odyssey Automotive, had grown frustrated with my father's management style. Their procurement director, Thomas Chen, was documented as saying, "Robert Whitfield treats vendor relationships like it's still 1990. He's insulted our team, refused reasonable modernization requests, and his quality control is slipping." The report recommended Odyssey seek alternative suppliers within 18 months. But the deeper issues were even more troubling. Employee satisfaction surveys conducted anonymously revealed a toxic culture. My father's old-school management included berating staff publicly promoting based on favoritism rather than merit and dismissing innovative suggestions with contempt. The phrase, "because I said so," appeared in multiple complaint records. I sat in my small Philadelphia apartment reading through testimonials from people I'd known since childhood. Janet Morrison, who'd taught me to tie my shoes during factory picnics, described being passed over for promotion 5 times, despite outperforming her male counterparts. Robert told me I should be grateful to have a job at all since most women my age are raising grandchildren, her statement read. David Park, the brilliant financial analyst who'd helped Madison with her high school calculus, had submitted a comprehensive automation proposal that would have saved millions. Dad's response, witnessed by 6 employees, was to throw the proposal in the trash and announce that anyone who thinks machines can replace American workers can find another job. The investigation revealed something else. Whitfield manufacturing wasn't just stagnant, it was dying. Market share had dropped 20% over 5 years. Competitors using modern techniques were underbidding them consistently. The only reason they'd survived this long was legacy relationships and my mother's quiet diplomacy smoothing over conflicts my father created. I made copies of everything, my hands shaking. This was my family's legacy, crumbling in real time. That night, I called Madison, careful to keep details vague. "How's everything at the company?" I asked. Her sigh told me everything. "You know, Dad, he's convinced everyone else is the problem. Mom keeps telling him to listen to the management team, but..." Another sigh. "I'm starting to wonder if I want this future Aubrey. The pressure, the way he treats people. Sometimes I think you made the smart choice." 2 weeks later, Thomas Chen reached out to me directly through LinkedIn. He'd done his research connecting the anonymous consultant to the Whitfield name. His message was brief. "I know who you are. We should talk." We met at a coffee shop in Philadelphia. Thomas was younger than I'd expected, early 30s, with kind eyes and a direct manner. "Your father is going to lose our contract," he said without preamble. "But I respect what your family built, even if Robert has lost sight of it. I have a proposition." He slid a folder across the table. "I've been authorized to invest in alternative suppliers, start a competing firm, take the contract, save the jobs your father is about to destroy." The number on the investment sheet made my breath catch. "Why me?" I asked. Thomas smiled. "Because you understand both worlds, the tradition that built the industry and the innovation needed to save it. And because sometimes the best revenge against those who underestimate you is magnificent success." I stared at the contract that would change everything. The golden child's shadow suddenly didn't feel so dark. It felt like the perfect cover for what I was about to build. The coffee shop buzzed with afternoon energy as I processed Thomas Chen's offer. Students hunched over laptops, business people grabbed quick meetings between calls, and here I sat with the power to upend my family's entire world in a manila folder. Thomas waited patiently, stirring his black coffee, while I read through the investment terms. "This is serious money," I finally said. "Your board approved this." "They approved investing in innovation," Thomas replied. "How that innovation emerges is my call. I've watched your father dismiss every modernization effort we've suggested. Last month, he told our CEO that email was killing American business when we asked for digital inventory tracking." I winced. That sounded exactly like Dad. "But starting a company to compete with my own family? Is it really yours?" Thomas asked gently. "From what I understand, you've been shut out of every major decision. Your insights ignored, your education belittled." He leaned forward. "Aubrey, your father is driving Whitfield manufacturing off a cliff. You can either watch it happen or build something better from its ashes." I requested 48 hours to think. That night, I called Sarah, my roommate from Wharton, who'd become my closest friend. "I need your father's advice," I said. Sarah's dad, Marcus Williams, had built 3 successful companies and now mentored young entrepreneurs. Marcus agreed to meet me that weekend at his home in Connecticut. The train ride gave me time to prepare my pitch, but when I sat in his study surrounded by business books and framed IPO certificates, my carefully rehearsed words vanished. "Someone wants to fund me to compete against my family's business," I blurted out. Marcus studied me over his reading glasses. "And you're conflicted." My father would see it as betrayal. "Would it be," Marcus asked, "or would it be evolution?" We talked for 3 hours. Marcus challenged every assumption, pushed back on every justification. He wasn't interested in my family drama or hurt feelings. He wanted to know about market analysis, competitive advantages, scalability. "Show me why this isn't just revenge," he said finally. "Develop a business plan that would work even if Whitfield Manufacturing didn't exist. If you can do that, I'll mentor you. But I have conditions." His terms were strict. Complete transparency about my family connection with all stakeholders. No poaching of current Whitfield employees for the first year. Focus on innovation, not imitation. And most importantly, regular sessions with a business therapist to ensure emotional decisions didn't override strategic thinking. "Building a business from spite creates bitter fruit," Marcus warned. "Building from vision creates empires." I spent the next 6 months crafting that vision. Days at Deloitte analyzing manufacturing trends, nights and weekends, developing a revolutionary approach to the industry. I researched sustainable materials that could reduce costs while improving quality. I studied Toyota's lean manufacturing principles and adapted them for American small batch production. I designed employee profit-sharing models that would attract top talent. My business plan went through 17 drafts. Marcus reviewed each one with surgical precision. "Why would a client choose you over established competitors?" he'd challenge. "What's your 5-year growth strategy? How do you handle economic downturns?" Sarah helped with market research, her Harvard MBA network providing invaluable data. We identified gaps in the current market. Manufacturers were either massive and inflexible or small and unreliable. Nobody occupied the sweet spot of medium-scale, highly adaptive, technology-forward production. During this time, I maintained my cover. Sunday dinners with my family became exercises in compartmentalization. I'd listen to Dad rant about disloyal clients and entitled workers, while mentally designing solutions to the problems he refused to acknowledge. One dinner particularly stood out. Madison had suggested implementing a new quality control system she'd learned about at Tesla. Dad's response was swift and cutting. "This isn't Silicon Valley, Madison. We make real products for real Americans, not toys for tech billionaires." "But Dad, the error rate would drop by..." "The error rate is fine." He slammed his fork down. "My father built this company with his bare hands. We don't need fancy systems. We need workers who take pride in their craft." Mom intervened with her practiced diplomacy. "Perhaps we could trial it in one department." "Patricia, not you too." Dad's disappointment was theatrical. "Next, you'll be suggesting we replace workers with robots like Aubrey's consulting friends recommend." I hadn't recommended anything, but pointing that out would only escalate tensions. Instead, I changed the subject to Madison's upcoming presentation at an engineering conference. Watching Dad's mood shift instantly to pride. The golden child could still do no wrong as long as she didn't challenge his methods. After dinner, Madison cornered me in our childhood kitchen. "He's impossible," she whispered. "Every good idea dies because it wasn't his. Janet Morrison developed an incredible efficiency protocol and he literally laughed in her face during the meeting." "Why does she stay?" I asked, though I knew the answer. Where else would a 60-year-old female engineer find comparable work in our town? Same reason they all do. Loyalty to what the company used to be. Hope that things will change. Madison glanced toward the living room where our parents sat. "I'm 25, Aubrey. I'm supposed to be learning how to lead, but all I'm learning is what not to do." 3 weeks later, Thomas called with urgency. "We're accelerating our timeline. Your father just insulted our board during a contract review, called them pencil pushers who wouldn't know quality if it bit them. We need alternative suppliers lined up within 6 months. I met with Marcus that night. I'm ready, I said, spreading my final business plan across his desk, 120 pages of analysis, projections, and strategies. He read in silence for an hour, occasionally making notes. Finally, he looked up. This is exceptional. You're not just competing with Whitfield, you're reimagining the entire sector. So you'll mentor me. On one condition beyond our original agreement. His expression was serious. You tell one family member the truth before launch. Complete secrecy will poison you. Choose wisely who to trust. I agreed, though the thought terrified me. Who could I trust with this secret? Marcus connected me with a business attorney, Catherine Walsh, who specialized in startup formation. Family business competition is tricky, she warned during our first meeting. Document everything. Keep personal and professional completely separate. And prepare for emotional warfare when the truth emerges. We incorporated Apex Industries in Delaware, choosing the name for its dual meaning, the peak of achievement, and the top predator in any ecosystem. Thomas's investment came through as promised, along with matching funds from 2 other manufacturers seeking supply chain alternatives. I rented a small office space an hour from my hometown, far enough to avoid accidental encounters, but close enough to understand the local market. The first weeks were overwhelming. Licensing permits, equipment, sourcing, facility hunting. I lived on 4 hours of sleep and instant ramen, telling my family I was working on a major consulting project. Marcus proved invaluable, introducing me to retired executives willing to advise a promising startup. One introduction changed everything. Patricia Nguyen, former COO of a Fortune 500 manufacturer. You're Robert Whitfield's daughter, she said within minutes of meeting me. My heart stopped, but she continued. I interviewed there 15 years ago. Your father told me I was too aggressive for a woman and suggested I consider teaching instead. I went on to generate $2 billion in revenue for my actual employer. She smiled. Tell me about your vision. Patricia became my shadow CEO, teaching me operational excellence while I maintained my Deloitte cover. We found a facility in an industrial park 40 miles from Whitfield Manufacturing, close enough to share suppliers, but far enough to stay off radar. The equipment purchases nearly gave me away. When a used CNC machine dealer mentioned young Whitfield was buying machinery, I had to quickly clarify I was purchasing for a client, not family. The near miss reminded me how small our industry world was. Late nights in the empty facility, I questioned everything. Was I building something valuable or just elaborate revenge? The sound of my footsteps echoed in the vast space, each step a decision taking me further from my family's expectations. One evening, exhausted and covered in dust from equipment installation, I called Sarah. Am I crazy? Probably, she laughed. But you're also brilliant. And more importantly, you're doing what needs doing. How many people would lose their jobs if Whitfield goes under? 312, I answered immediately. I'd memorized the employee roster. Then you're not building a competitor, you're building a lifeboat. The next morning, I stood in my empty factory and made a decision. This wasn't about proving my father wrong anymore. It was about proving that business could be both profitable and ethical, innovative, and inclusive, successful, and sustainable. Thomas visited the facility 2 weeks before our equipment testing. You've accomplished more in 6 months than most do in years, he observed, watching our newly hired engineers calibrate machines. We haven't produced anything yet, I reminded him. You've produced hope, he replied. That's the hardest thing to manufacture. As we walked through the facility, discussing production timelines and quality metrics, my phone buzzed with a family group text. Madison had gotten engaged to Harrison Sterling, son of a prominent banking family. Mom's excitement filled the screen with emoji-filled congratulations. I typed my own congratulations, wondering if Madison was truly happy or simply fulfilling another expectation. The thought strengthened my resolve. We all deserve the freedom to build our own futures, not just inherit the ones assigned to us. That night, reviewing resumes for production supervisors, I allowed myself a moment of pride. Apex Industries wasn't just a business plan anymore. It was real, with walls and machines, and soon employees depending on its success. The seed of rebellion had taken root. Now it was time to grow it into something magnificent. The first hire at Apex Industries wasn't planned. Janet Morrison appeared at our facility on a rainy Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before our first production run. I found her standing outside the locked entrance professional in her pressed blazer despite the downpour. Mrs. Morrison. My shock was genuine. The veteran engineer who'd been denied promotions at Whitfield for 2 decades stood before me, resume in hand. "Hello, Aubrey. May we talk?" In my sparse office, she sat straight-backed while I fumbled with the coffee maker. "How did you find out?" "Equipment dealers talk," she said simply. "When someone orders the exact machinery to compete with Whitfield, word spreads. Your father mentioned a mystery competitor last week ranting about vultures circling. I did the math." My heart raced. If Janet had figured it out, who else knew? She continued before I could panic. "I'm 61 years old. Your father has passed me over for promotion 14 times. Last month, he promoted a 28-year-old man with 3 years' experience to senior engineer. When I questioned it, Robert said I should be grateful to still have a position at my age. I'm sorry when I said meaning it. You deserved better." "Yes, I did, which is why I'm here." Janet placed her resume on my desk. "I have 35 years of experience, 12 patents and relationships with every quality supplier in the region. More importantly, I have 3 colleagues in similar situations ready to follow if you'll have us." This violated Marcus's mentorship condition about not poaching for a year. But they'd come to me. "I can't match Whitfield's benefits immediately," I warned. Janet laughed, surprising us both. "Aubrey, respect is a benefit your father never offered. When do we start?" Before I could respond, my phone rang. Sarah's name flashed on screen, our code for emergency family contact. "I need to take this." I apologized. "Aubrey." Sarah's voice was breathless. "Madison just called me. She knows about your company and wants to invest. What do I tell her?" The room spun slightly. Madison knew I looked at Janet, who waited patiently, then at the rain streaming down windows. "Tell her to meet me at the old bridge park at 8 tonight, alone." After ending the call, I faced Janet. "If you work here, you need to know I'm building this company to compete directly with my family's business. It will get messy." "It already is messy," Janet replied. "Your father's mismanagement is destroying what your grandparents built. Someone needs to preserve their real legacy quality American manufacturing. I'd rather it be you than some corporate raider." We shook hands, and I gained not just an engineer, but a moral compass for the journey ahead. That evening, Madison waited at the park where we'd played as children, her designer coat incongruous against the weathered picnic table. 18 months of secret company building," she said without preamble. "I'm impressed and hurt in equal measure." "How did you find out?" She pulled out her tablet, showing a detailed analysis. "I'm writing my senior thesis on regional manufacturing competition. Your incorporation documents use shell companies, but the legal structures have your strategic fingerprint all over them. Plus, you've been mysteriously busy with consulting projects that never appear in Deloitte's client roster." My sister had always been brilliant. I'd forgotten she was also observant. "Are you going to tell Dad?" "That depends. Why are you doing this?" I told her everything. The client departures, the toxic culture, the innovative stagnation, Thomas's offer and Marcus's mentorship, my vision for ethical, sustainable manufacturing. Madison listened without interrupting her expression, cycling through surprise, understanding, and something like relief. "I've been suffocating," she admitted when I finished. "Dad treats me like a prize show horse, not a person with ideas. Every suggestion is dismissed unless I pretend it came from him. Do you know what it's like being the chosen one for a future you're not sure you want?" We talked until midnight, sharing frustrations we'd never voiced. Madison revealed her growing relationship with Harrison Sterling was partly escape strategy. His family connections could protect me from Dad's control, pathetic right, using marriage as a business merger. You deserve love, not strategic alliance, I said. So do you. When's the last time you went on a date? I laughed. Between secret company building and family dinners, I've mastered the art of deflecting Mom's matchmaking attempts. Madison grew serious. I want to invest, not just money. My skills, my ideas, everything Dad won't let me contribute. But it has to stay secret until you're ready. We worked out the details. Madison would funnel investment through her trust fund, structured as educational expenses. She'd provide technical consulting on her thesis research while maintaining her role at Whitfield. I'm not abandoning the family company, she clarified, but maybe having alternatives will force Dad to evolve. Over the following months, Madison became my secret weapon. Her Tesla internship provided cutting-edge automation insights. Her MIT network connected us with brilliant young engineers tired of corporate bureaucracy. Most valuable was her inside knowledge of Whitfield's weaknesses. Dad just lost another supplier contract. She'd text during family dinners, or new client complain about delivery delays. They're considering alternatives. Meanwhile, Janet Morrison transformed our production floor. She recruited David Park, the dismissed financial analyst, who implemented cost controls that reduced expenses by 30% without sacrificing quality. His profit-sharing proposals mocked at Whitfield became cornerstone of our culture. The third key hire was Maria Santos Whitfield's former head of quality control, who'd resigned after Dad blamed her for defects caused by his outdated equipment. He announced in front of the entire floor that diversity hires were ruining American manufacturing, she told me during her interview. I have a master's from Northwestern and 15 years of excellence, but to him, I'm just a quota. Maria revolutionized our quality systems, implementing AI-driven inspections that caught defects human eyes missed. Our error rate dropped to near zero, while production speed increased. Building Apex while maintaining my double life required exhausting logistics. I'd leave family dinners claiming client emergencies, then drive to the facility for night shifts. My Deloitte colleagues believed I was managing a demanding consulting project. My family thought work was consuming my life. You're getting thin, Mom observed during one Sunday dinner. All this travel can't be healthy. Leave her alone, Dad interjected. At least she's working not expecting handouts like her generation typically does. Madison caught my eye, suppressing an eye roll. If only he knew his handout generation daughter was building an empire on superior ethics and innovation. The closest call came during Thanksgiving preparation. Mom asked me to collect documents from Dad's home office for tax purposes. Searching for the filing cabinet key, I found a folder marked Competition Analysis. My heart stopped. Inside were printouts about Apex Industries, including incorporation records I thought we'd hidden. But Dad's handwritten notes revealed his blind spot. Another venture capital play. Will fail within a year, like all tech startups. No threat to established players. He discovered us and dismissed us simultaneously. I photographed the documents' useful intelligence for our strategy. Dad's arrogance would be his downfall. Harrison Sterling entering our family orbit added another layer of complexity. The banking heir was handsome, charming, and clearly smitten with Madison. But something felt off during family dinners where he attended. Your father speaks highly of Whitfield's financial stability, Harrison mentioned one evening. Sterling Bank would be interested in partnership opportunities. Dad practically glowed. Finally, someone who recognizes solid American business. Not like these fly-by-night startups thinking they can disrupt established industry. I choked on my wine while Madison kicked me under the table. Harrison's attention intensified when Dad mentioned Madison's trust fund and future inheritance. The calculation in his eyes was subtle but unmistakable. Be careful, I warned Madison later. He's seeing dollar signs, not you. I know, she admitted sadly. But Dad's so happy about the connection. And honestly, if I'm going to be married for business reasons, at least Harrison's attractive and doesn't mansplain engineering to me. Her resignation broke my heart. You could work with me full-time. Leave Whitfield, live your own life. Not yet. Someone needs to monitor things from inside. Besides, imagine Dad's reaction if both daughters abandoned ship. He'd have a stroke. We maintained our careful balance through winter into spring. Apex secured its first major contract with a startup electric vehicle manufacturer seeking innovative suppliers. Our sustainable materials and rapid prototyping capabilities won over traditional competitors. First month's orders exceed projections by 40%, David reported during our Monday morning meeting. If this continues, we'll need second shift sooner than planned. Janet had already identified potential hires, all skilled workers undervalued elsewhere. Living wages and respect attract talent, she noted. Revolutionary concept, apparently. My double life grew more complex as Apex succeeded. Lying to my family gnawed at my conscience, but watching Dad's continued mismanagement justified the deception. He'd fired 2 more engineers for insubordination, suggesting improvements, and lost another major client to unreasonable demands, basic quality standards. One night, reviewing expansion plans in my apartment, exhaustion overwhelmed me. I was 29 years old, running a growing company while pretending to be a mid-level consultant. My personal life consisted of family obligations and secret business meetings. The weight of deception pressed against my chest. Sarah found me crying over spreadsheets. "This is unsustainable," she said gently. "You need to tell them soon." After Madison's wedding, I promised. Let her have that without drama. But as I'd learned, family drama follows its own timeline, not our carefully laid plans. Spring arrived with a flood of orders that tested every system we'd built at Apex Industries. Our electric vehicle client had recommended us to 3 competitors, all seeking suppliers who could deliver innovation without the bureaucratic nightmares of established manufacturers. I stood on the production floor at 5 a.m. watching our first shift arrive, feeling a mixture of pride and terror. "Morning, boss," Maria Santos called out, already reviewing quality reports on her tablet. "0 defects on yesterday's final inspection. 3rd perfect day this week." These moments made the exhaustion worthwhile. At Whitfield, perfection was luck. At Apex, it was standard. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Emergency board meeting. Dad's freaking out about quarterly numbers." Whitfield Manufacturing had posted its 3rd consecutive quarter of losses. Their largest remaining client had reduced orders by half, citing delivery delays and quality concerns. The writing wasn't just on the wall, it was in neon lights. But acknowledging problems required humility my father didn't possess. According to Madison's covert recordings, he blamed everyone except himself. Lazy workers, disloyal clients, unfair competition, government regulations, and his favorite scapegoat, millennial entitlement. He actually said the problem is workers wanting weekends off. Madison reported during our weekly secret meeting at a diner 2 towns over. Janet Morrison's replacement quit after 2 weeks because Dad screamed at him for suggesting preventive maintenance schedules. I pushed pancakes around my plate, appetite gone. "How's Mom handling it?" Denial wrapped in designer clothes. She's redecorating the house again, talking about hosting Madison's engagement party like we're not hemorrhaging money. Madison paused. "Actually, about that, I need to tell you something about Harrison." Her voice carried a weight that made me look up. "What's wrong?" "His family's bank has been buying Whitfield's debt, quietly through subsidiaries. Harrison let slip after too much wine that once we're married, Sterling Bank plans to help restructure the company." She laughed bitterly. "I'm not just a strategic marriage. I'm a hostile takeover wrapped in wedding dress." The calculation was breathtaking. Marry the heir gain. Inside access, dismantle the company for parts. "Madison, you can't—" "I know, but if I call it off, Dad loses the Sterling connection he's counting on for survival." She met my eyes. "Unless another buyer emerges first." The implication hung between us like a charged wire. Apex Industries, barely a year old considering acquiring the company I'd been raised to inherit. The audacity was intoxicating. "We're not ready." I said, though my mind was already running scenarios. We'd need massive capital expansion credit lines, investor backing, or, Madison interrupted, we'd need Dad to get desperate enough to accept a lowball offer from his mysterious competitor, especially if that competitor already has his next generation of leadership on board. We spent 3 hours sketching possibilities on napkins, two sisters plotting corporate patricide over coffee refills. By the time we parted, the seed was planted. Apex Industries wouldn't just compete with Whitfield Manufacturing, we'd save it from itself. The next months blurred together in a haze of 18-hour days. I maintained my Deloitte cover while building Apex into a regional powerhouse. We hired our second and third shifts, implemented Madison's automation protocols, and landed contracts with 2 Fortune 500 manufacturers. Our success attracted attention. Regional Business Quarterly ran a feature on the mystery startup disrupting traditional manufacturing. They hadn't identified me as CEO yet, but speculation ran wild. Some theorized we were a Silicon Valley transplant. Others suspected foreign investment. Nobody guessed the truth: the failure's daughter was eating their lunch. The irony of attending family dinners while secretly dismantling their monopoly grew sharper. Dad would rant about Apex Industries, while I nodded sympathetically, filing away his fears for strategic use. They're stealing our clients with unsustainable pricing, he declared one Sunday, carving roast like he was stabbing enemies. Probably burning venture capital. They'll fold within 2 years. Maybe they're just more efficient, Madison suggested innocently. Dad's knife paused mid-slice. More efficient than 3 decades of experience, than the company that built this industry locally. His face reddened. This is what happens when people prioritize technology over relationships. Real business is done face-to-face with handshakes and honor. Is that why Thompson Industries dropped us? Madison pressed. Because of honor. The silence stretched taut. Thompson had been Whitfield's second-largest client until Dad insulted their procurement team for requesting environmental compliance documentation. Thompson was infiltrated by liberal nonsense. Dad spat. Climate change quotas and diversity metrics. We build quality products, not social justice warriors. I caught Mom's eye, seeing exhaustion beneath her perfect makeup. She'd spent 30 years managing his temper, smoothing his rough edges, apologizing for his offenses. How many clients had she retained through sheer grace? After dinner, I helped Mom clear plates while Dad and Harrison discussed real business over scotch. "Sweetheart," Mom said quietly, "I know you're building something." My hands stilled in soapy water. "Mom, I'm not blind. The late nights, the evasive answers, the way Madison looks at you like you hung the moon." She dried a plate methodically. "Whatever it is, be careful. Your father doesn't handle competition well, especially from women." "Would you stop me?" She considered this while stacking china. 20 years ago, I had ideas too. Improvements, expansions, modernizations. Your father patted my head and told me to focus on raising you girls. Her smile was sad. Maybe it's time someone showed him what we're capable of. That night, I lay awake processing the revelation. Mom knew, or at least suspected. Yet she'd kept silent, maybe even provided cover. The woman I'd dismissed as decoration had been playing a longer game. My phone lit up with encrypted files from Madison. Harrison's pillow talk had revealed Sterling Bank's timeline: acquire Whitfield's debt force default through aggressive terms, marry Madison for inside access, then break up the company for real estate value alone. The factory would become condos. 300 jobs would vanish. Our family legacy would be erased for profit margins. "We have 6 months," Madison's message read. 8 if Dad can secure bridge financing. 6 months to grow Apex large enough for acquisition. 6 months to position ourselves as saviors rather than raiders. 6 months to prevent Harrison Sterling from turning our childhood home into a parking lot. I called Marcus Williams at midnight. "I need to accelerate everything." "What's changed?" "Family is in danger, not from me, from someone worse." Marcus sighed. "How much do you need?" 20 million credit line. 30 would be better. You're asking me to bet on a company that's barely a year old, run by someone living a double life to acquire a failing business with massive debt. Yes. The pause stretched across states. I'll make some calls, but Aubrey, it's time to come clean. These situations explode. Control the narrative or it controls you. He was right, but first I needed leverage. I spent the next week negotiating with Odyssey Automotive, Thomas Chen's company that had launched this journey. Their contract with Whitfield ended in 2 months. We could handle their full volume with our expansion. You've exceeded every projection, Thomas noted during our facility tour. But taking Whitfield's place means tripling capacity overnight. We'll be ready. I promised mentally calculating equipment needs hiring requirements and sleepless nights ahead. The financial maze required expert navigation. Catherine Walsh. My attorney introduced me to investment bankers who specialized in distressed acquisitions. They saw Whitfield's numbers and whistled. Your father's been cooking books, one noted delicately. Not illegally, but creatively. Real debt is 40% higher than reported. Each revelation felt like uncovering rot in childhood floorboards. How long had Dad been hiding the decay? How much had Mom seen while staying silent? The Sterling situation grew more urgent when Harrison formally proposed to Madison. She called me crying from a restaurant bathroom. He did it in front of his parents and mine. Public pressure. I couldn't say no without causing a scene. You don't have to marry him, I said firmly. If I don't, Dad's lost his last hope. Harrison's already hinting about family investments after the wedding. She sniffled. I'm 26 years old and being sold for parts. Not on my watch, I promised. That weekend, I made a decision that would accelerate everything. During Saturday dinner at an upscale steakhouse, Harrison held court about Sterling Bank's regional dominance, while Madison smiled like a hostage. Dad glowed with proximity to power. Mom drank more wine than usual. When Harrison stepped away for a call, I seized my moment. Did you know Sterling Bank has been buying your debt, Dad? His fork paused. What are you talking about? My clients at Deloitte track regional banking movements. Sterling's been acquiring Whitfield obligations through shell companies. You owe them 70% of your credit. I watched realization dawn. The eager wedding planning. The sudden interest in family business. The generous terms that now looked like trapdoors. You're mistaken, he said, but uncertainty flickered. Check your loan documents. Cross-reference the holding companies. Harrison's family doesn't want an alliance. They want your real estate. Madison's eyes widened with perfectly timed shock. Is that why he's been asking about property valuations? The seed of doubt was planted. Over the following days, Dad's investigation confirmed what we'd leaked. His rage was biblical. Phone calls to lawyers, bankers, anyone who'd listen. But Sterling had played within legal bounds. The only escape was finding another buyer before they called in the debt, which is when Apex Industries made our formal offer. Madison's wedding day arrived with the kind of perfection money could buy and authenticity couldn't touch. I stood in the bridal suite at the Sterling family's country club, watching makeup artists transform my sister into a vision of resigned beauty. Her smile never reached her eyes. You can still walk away, I whispered while the photographer adjusted lights. With what? Madison laughed humorlessly. Dad signed personal guarantees on those Sterling loans. If I humiliate Harrison publicly, his family will destroy ours financially. The trap was elegant in its cruelty. Over the past 3 months, Sterling Bank had accelerated their takeover timeline, calling in small portions of debt just to demonstrate power. Each payment drained Whitfield's reserves, forcing Dad to accept bridge financing with increasingly predatory terms. 5 more minutes, ladies, Mom chirped with artificial brightness, her third mimosa barely touched. She'd been medicating with champagne in denial since breakfast. I squeezed Madison's hand. Trust me, something will happen. What happened exceeded even my desperate hope. The ceremony unfolded like a glossy magazine spread. 200 guests filled the garden spring flowers, framing an altar that cost more than most cars. Harrison waited with the satisfaction of a collector acquiring a rare piece. His parents flanked him like generals overseeing conquest. I walked down the aisle, first maid of honor in lavender silk, scanning the crowd. Thomas Chen sat with other business associates. Janet Morrison had somehow received an invitation, her expression carefully neutral. Marcus Williams occupied a back row, having arrived as my +1 to celebrate my dear friend's wedding. Madison emerged on Dad's arm, and I saw the moment he realized his defeat. This wasn't a father giving away his daughter. It was a businessman surrendering assets. The awareness flickered across his face before pride reasserted itself. The ceremony proceeded with scripted precision until the officiant reached the vows. Harrison spoke first, his promises focusing oddly on partnership, mutual benefit, and combined resources. It sounded more like a merger announcement than a marriage. Then Madison's turn came. She looked at the card with her prepared vows, then slowly tore it in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed across silent gardens. "I need to be honest," Madison began, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Harrison, you're intelligent, ambitious, and from a powerful family. Any woman would be fortunate to align with sterling resources." Harrison's smile wavered. His mother leaned forward. "But that's exactly the problem," Madison continued. "This isn't a marriage. It's a hostile takeover disguised in white lace. Your family has systematically acquired my father's company debt, and this wedding is just the final signature on an acquisition document." Gasps rippled through the congregation. Dad shot to his feet. "Madison, what are you doing?" "Something I should have done months ago." She turned to face the assembled crowd. "Harrison told me last night, after too much celebration, exactly what happens after our honeymoon. Whitfield Manufacturing gets broken up for parts. 300 people lose their jobs. Our family legacy becomes a tax write-off." "These are private business matters," Harrison's father stood, voice commanding. "Not appropriate for what honesty?" Madison laughed, actually laughed, while tears streamed down her face. "You want to know what else isn't appropriate? Harrison's prenup includes a fidelity clause that only applies to me. Apparently, sterling men have traditional privileges in marriage." The revelation landed like a grenade. Mothers pulled daughters closer. Fathers shifted uncomfortably. Harrison's carefully composed mask cracked. "Madison, you're emotional." He reached for her arm. "Let's discuss this privately." She stepped back, bouquet dropping. "No, we're done discussing privately. Done with handshake deals that crush families. Done pretending business justifies cruelty." She looked directly at her father. "And I'm done being sold to save a company you've already destroyed through arrogance." The silence that followed could have suffocated elephants. Then from the back row, slow clapping started. Marcus Williams stood, his applause echoing. Janet Morrison joined, then Thomas Chen. One by one, people who'd been wronged by both families' methods rose in solidarity. Harrison's face flushed crimson. "You'll regret this. Sterling Bank will call in every loan. Your family will be bankrupt by Monday." Actually, a new voice interrupted, "They won't." Everyone turned as Marcus Williams approached the altar with documents. "Miss Whitfield, as CEO of Apex Industries, asked me to present this formal acquisition offer. Cash purchase of all outstanding Whitfield Manufacturing debt, including Sterling Bank holdings. The contracts are already filed with state regulators." My moment had arrived. I stepped forward, no longer the overlooked daughter, but revealed as the architect of salvation. "Surprise, Dad." Robert Whitfield's face cycled through confusion, rage, and shock like a broken kaleidoscope. "You Apex Industries is you. Me along with every talented person you drove away." I gestured to Janet, who waved cheerfully. "Every innovation you mocked, we implemented. Every worker you belittled, we hired. Every client you insulted, we served better." "This is conspiracy," Harrison sputtered. "Fraud. We'll sue." "For what?" Catherine Walsh, my attorney, materialized beside Marcus. "Apex Industries made a legal offer at above-market rates. Sterling Bank's board voted to accept this morning. Check your phones." The beautiful chaos that erupted defied wedding etiquette. Harrison's parents screaming about betrayal, Dad advancing on me with fists clenched, Mom stepping between us with steel in her spine I'd never seen. Guests recording everything on phones, ensuring this disaster would trend within hours. Inside, Mom commanded with authority that brooked no argument. Family only, now. We retreated to the country club's library, leaving 200 guests to gossip over abandoned reception tables. The immediate family gathered Mom, Dad, Madison still in her wedding dress, and me in bridesmaid lavender. The fortune we'd spent on this facade could have saved 10 jobs. Dad rounded on me immediately. How dare you, stealing from your own family? Stealing. I laughed, harsh and bitter. I built something better than what you were destroying. That's not theft. That's evolution. With whose money, whose connections? Spittle flew from his lips. Everything you have came from the Whitfield name. Everything I have came despite the Whitfield name. I pulled out my phone, showing bank statements. Thomas Chen invested because you insulted him. Marcus Williams mentored me because you exemplified everything wrong with old-school management. Your former employees joined because you treated them like machinery instead of humans. Those ungrateful— Stop! Mom's voice cut through his building tirade. Robert, sit down and shut up for once in your life. We all froze. Patricia Whitfield had never spoken to her husband like that in public or private. She stood by the window silhouette, rigid against afternoon light. Do you know why I stayed? She asked conversationally. Through the affairs, the belittlement, the watching you destroy everything my father helped build. Dad's mouth opened and closed fish-like. Patricia. Elena Rodriguez, Jennifer Barnes, Sandra Kim. Should I continue listing your secretaries? Robert. The ones you thought I didn't know about. Each name landed like a slap. Madison grabbed my hand, both of us reeling from Mom's revelations. I stayed because divorce would have given you sole control of Whitfield Manufacturing. The prenup your lawyer insisted on backfired spectacularly. As your wife, I maintained joint ownership. As your ex-wife, I'd have nothing. Mom turned from the window. So I documented everything. Every affair, every embezzled dollar, every fraudulent report to investors. She produced a leather portfolio from her purse, thick with papers and flash drives. 15 years of evidence. I was waiting for the right moment to act. Aubrey just provided it. The ground beneath our family shifted tectonically. This wasn't just business implosion. This was decades of deception unraveling in real time. You knew, Madison's voice came out strangled. This whole time, I knew protected you both as best I could and planned. Mom's composure never wavered. Did you think the company survived this long on your father's leadership? I've been managing shadow operations for a decade, smoothing over his disasters, retaining clients. He insulted paying off mistresses who might sue. She handed the portfolio to me. Your acquisition of Whitfield Manufacturing has my full support as majority shareholder. I formally request you also acquire this evidence of criminal misconduct. Dad lunged for the portfolio. I'd never seen him move so fast or desperately. Marcus and I pulled him back while he screamed about betrayal, about ungrateful women, about conspiracies to emasculate him. Is that what you think this is? Mom asked with genuine curiosity. An attack on your masculinity. Robert, you destroyed our company through ego and ignorance. Your daughters succeeded through intelligence and innovation. The only conspiracy here is yours against competence. The truth of it broke something in him. Robert Whitfield, titan of traditional industry, crumpled into a chair. For the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. Not tears of manipulation or rage, but genuine collapse of a worldview built on foundations of sand. Madison knelt beside him, still in her wedding dress, the daughter he'd groomed for greatness. Dad, it's not too late. Apex can save Whitfield. The jobs, the legacy, everything you claim to care about. But you have to let go of control. Let go. He looked between us with bewilderment. To my failures, the daughter too stupid for engineering and the wife too weak to leave. Even broken, he couldn't resist cruelty. It made what came next easier. I opened my laptop showing prepared documents. Option 1. Apex Industries acquires Whitfield Manufacturing as a subsidiary. You retire with dignity, a golden parachute, and no criminal prosecution. Option 2. We let Sterling Bank's original plan proceed. You lose everything, and Mom's evidence goes to federal prosecutors. That's blackmail, he whispered. That's business, Mom corrected. The kind you taught us through negative example. Madison stood shedding her veil like outgrown skin. I'm done being your show pony, Dad. Done living the life you scripted. Apex Industries has offered me Chief Technology Officer. I'm accepting. The betrayals compounded like interest. His golden child choosing the usurper. His submissive wife revealing steel beneath silk. His failed daughter holding his future in manicured hands. You'll destroy everything I built, he said flatly. No, I corrected gently. We'll save what you built and transform what you broke. Whitfield Manufacturing will survive. Your methods won't. The meeting continued for 3 more hours, lawyers arriving to formalize what family had fractured. By sunset, papers were signed. Apex Industries owned Whitfield Manufacturing. Dad retained a ceremonial title and financial security in exchange for complete operational removal. As we prepared to leave, Mom pulled Madison and me aside. I'm proud of you both. You did what I couldn't, fought back with grace instead of bitterness. What will you do now? Madison asked. Mom smiled, looking younger than she had in years. First divorce papers, then I think I'll travel. See what the world offers women who refuse to shrink themselves. She kissed our foreheads. You've given me freedom. Let me give you advice. Don't let success make you cruel. Power corrupts even the wronged. We left the country club separately. Madison drove away in her wedding dress, heading to my apartment instead of a honeymoon. I departed with Marcus and Catherine, new documents making me owner of my childhood torment. Mom took her own car portfolio of evidence tucked safely away. Dad remained in the library, surrounded by the wreckage of empire and ego. Harrison Sterling had fled with his parents, their takeover dreams, as dead as the wedding that birthed them. 200 guests had dispersed with enough gossip to fuel county social circles for decades. The betrayal was complete. The question now, could we build something worthy from the wreckage? The videos hit social media before we even left the country club parking lot. Bride exposes corporate conspiracy at own wedding, trending within hours. By morning, Madison's teardown of Harrison Sterling had 3 million views and climbing. Our family's spectacular implosion became everyone's entertainment. Madison hadn't left my apartment in 4 days. She sat curled on my couch, still wearing her engagement ring, like a reminder of narrow escape. His lawyers are demanding return of all gifts, she said, scrolling through legal threats. Apparently, humiliation voids generosity. Catherine will handle them, I assured her, delivering coffee and confidence in equal measure. Sterling Bank already accepted our buyout. They have no leverage left. Except public opinion. Madison showed me her phone screen filled with bile. Comments ranged from support to slut-shaming, with strangers dissecting our family dynamics like a reality show. Dad's given 3 interviews painting us as ungrateful daughters who destroyed a loving father. The narrative war had begun. Robert Whitfield, master of no domain except manipulation, was spinning our business victory into personal tragedy. Conservative podcasters championed him as a victim of radical feminism. Business journals questioned if emotional women could successfully run manufacturing. My phone buzzed with our publicist. William Anderson from the Wall Street Journal wants an exclusive. He's promising fair coverage of the acquisition. Schedule it, I decided. But here, not their offices. Show them our operation, not just our opinions. Mom had taken different approach to the fracture. She'd vanished completely, leaving only a note. Handling necessary matters. Don't look for me. Trust the process. Her lawyer communicated that divorce papers had been filed citing irreconcilable differences rather than the infidelity and fraud she could have claimed. Why protect him now? Madison wondered aloud. Because cruelty is his weapon, not hers. I suggested, though, Mom's motivations remained opaque as always. The doorbell interrupted our speculation. Through the peephole, I saw Dad disheveled in yesterday's clothes. My hand hesitated on the lock. "Let him in," Madison said quietly. "We need to face this." He entered like a stranger, the commanding presence I'd feared my whole life reduced to hollow desperation. "Your mother won't answer my calls." "Can you blame her?" I asked. 35 years of marriage. She owes me conversation at least. Madison laughed sharp and bitter. "She owes you nothing, just like we owe you nothing. That's what you never understood, Dad. Relationships aren't transactions. Love isn't debt." He sank into my armchair without permission, looking around my apartment like seeing it for the first time. The life I'd built without his approval or assistance, made visible in modern furniture and framed achievements he'd never acknowledged. "Why?" he asked finally. "I gave you everything. Best schools, comfortable life, guaranteed futures. Why betray me?" "You gave us things," I corrected. "Not respect, not opportunity, not the freedom to be ourselves instead of your props. I protected you from harsh realities." "You were the harsh reality." Madison's composure cracked. Every achievement dismissed if it wasn't your way. Every idea mocked if it threatened your ego. Do you know what it's like being praised to others but belittled at home? Dad's face flushed. "I pushed you toward excellence." "You pushed us toward your definition of excellence," I interrupted, "which meant shrinking ourselves to fit your comfort zone. Well, we're done shrinking." The argument that followed was 20 years overdue. Grievances poured out like pus from infected wounds. Madison detailed every time he'd taken credit for her innovations. I listed every dismissal of my education, every snide comment about soft skills and women's work. He defended with increasing desperation. We were too sensitive. Business required toughness. Modern philosophies were destroying traditional values. The litany of conservative platitudes that justified emotional neglect. "Get out," I finally said. "Come back when you're ready to listen instead of lecture." He stood slowly, age showing in every movement. "Your mother took the house keys, changed the locks already. My own home, Aubrey. 3 decades of mortgage payments and I can't enter my own home. It's her home too, you just never noticed." After he left Madison and I sat in exhausted silence, victory felt hollow when it came at family's expense. We'd saved the company but shattered the clan. My phone rang with an unknown number. Against better judgment, I answered. "Miss Whitfield, this is Jennifer Barnes, Dad's former mistress." My hand tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "To meet. I have information about your father you need to know. It affects your company acquisition." We arranged to meet at a neutral location the next morning. Madison insisted on accompanying me, united in suspicion. Jennifer Barnes wasn't what I'd expected. Professional rather than seductive, she waited in the coffee shop with folders and remorse. "I owe you both an apology. The affair was wrong, but there's more you need to know." She spread documents across the table. Bank statements, emails, photographs. "Your father's been hiding assets. Offshore accounts, shell companies, systematic embezzlement going back 15 years. I helped him thinking it was tax planning. It wasn't." The scale stunned even cynical me. Millions siphoned from Whitfield manufacturing into Caribbean hideaways. Contracts inflated with kickbacks flowing to personal accounts. Our family business hollowed out by the man sworn to protect it. "Why tell us now?" Madison asked. "Because he's planning to use these funds to challenge your acquisition. Hire lawyers to tie you up for years, bleed Apex dry through litigation." Jennifer met our eyes steadily. "I've already been to the FBI. Immunity in exchange for testimony. You should know what's coming." She left us with copies of everything. Evidence that would imprison our father, destroy any sympathy he'd cultivated, and any hope of reconciliation. "We have to tell Mom," Madison said numbly. But Mom already knew. She called that evening from an undisclosed location, voice calm as always. "Jennifer reached out weeks ago. I've been coordinating with federal investigators. It's why I disappeared, protecting evidence, providing corroboration." "You're testifying against Dad." "I'm testifying for truth. What he does with truth is his choice." She paused. "I've also transferred my shares in both companies to you two. Equal split. I want no part of business anymore." "Mom, I spent 35 years managing his disasters. You saved what could be saved. Let me find my own salvation now." The call ended with love but no forwarding address. Our mother, the shadow executive, had vanished into whatever life awaited women who refused to be supporting characters anymore. Madison moved out of my apartment the next week, finding her own space to process the ruins. We met daily at Apex headquarters, building the future while our past burned behind us. The media circus intensified. Business channels analyzed our acquisition structure. Lifestyle blogs dissected our family psychology. Everyone had opinions on the Whitfield women who'd toppled a patriarch. Then came the FBI raid on Dad's home. News helicopters circled while agents carried out boxes of evidence. He was arrested on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The perp walk photos showed a broken man who'd finally met consequences. "I feel nothing," Madison confessed that night. "Shouldn't I feel something? He's our father." "He was our father," I corrected. "Now he's just a cautionary tale about toxic leadership." But late at night, alone with merger documents and memories, I grieved. Not for who he was, but who he could have been. The father who might have celebrated our successes instead of fearing them. The leader who could have evolved instead of calcified. The man who chose pride over family at every crucial turn. Apex Industries thrived amid the chaos. Our story resonated with workers tired of outdated management. Resume flooded in from talented people seeking respectful environments. Clients appreciated transparency and innovation over old boys club handshakes. We held our first all-hands meeting in Whitfield's former executive conference room. 300 employees gathered, some who'd worked there for decades, others brand new to our vision. Change is hard. I addressed them honestly. Watching leadership fail is harder. But together we're proving that business can be both profitable and principled. That strength doesn't require cruelty. That the future belongs to those who adapt rather than those who attack. Madison presented our technology roadmap innovations Dad had stifled, now given resources to flourish. Janet Morrison announced our new mentorship program, ensuring knowledge transfer between generations. David Park detailed profit-sharing plans that would make every worker an owner. The applause was genuine hope, replacing fear in halls that had known too much of both. Later, cleaning out Dad's former office, I found a photo from my college graduation. He stood between Madison and me, proud smile masking the disappointment he'd voiced privately. We looked happy. We looked like a family. I kept the photo not from nostalgia, but as reminder. Success built on others' destruction was still destruction. We had to be better than what we'd replaced. Madison found me there staring at frozen memories. Any regrets? Every day, but not about the outcome, about the necessity. She hugged me, sisters who'd survived different versions of the same war. We did what needed doing. Now we do what needs building. Outside, the office window shifts changed with orderly precision. Workers who'd once cringed at executive footsteps now walked with dignity. The empire we'd inherited through betrayal was becoming something worth believing in. Our family had fractured beyond repair, but from those cracks, light was finally getting in. Federal investigations moved slowly, but market confidence shifted at light speed. Within 2 weeks of the FBI raid, Whitfield Manufacturing's remaining contracts began canceling. Clients who'd tolerated Dad's behavior when he held power abandoned ship once consequences arrived. Each departure email copied to me as new CEO felt like vindication mixed with ash. Thompson Industries is requesting expedited exit from their Whitfield contract. David Park informed me during our Monday morning briefing. They want to transition to Apex immediately. I studied the numbers on my screen, each digit representing jobs, families, futures. Offer Whitfield workers first placement opportunity. No one loses employment because of leadership changes. That's generous, David noted. Some of these people enabled your father for years. Fear makes accomplices of us all. Let's break that cycle. The true hostile takeover wasn't Apex absorbing Whitfield. It was hope conquering resignation in every corner of our merged operations. Madison revolutionized production lines with automation that enhanced rather than replaced human skill. Workers who'd hidden innovations for decades suddenly presented ideas they'd shelved under Dad's regime. My assistant knocked, interrupting strategy discussions. There's a woman insisting she speak with you, says her name is Sandra Kim. The name from Mom's litany of Dad's affairs. My stomach tightened. Send her in. Sandra Kim entered with dignified composure, a woman in her 50s carrying herself like someone who'd survived wars. She sat without invitation, studying me with unsettling familiarity. You have Patricia's eyes, but Robert's ambition, she observed. Dangerous combination. If you're here about past indiscretions, I'm here about present dangers. She placed a tablet on my desk, financial documents displayed. Your father didn't just steal from Whitfield. He's been building a shadow company for 5 years. Shell corporations layered through Panama, funded by embezzled money waiting to compete once his non-compete expires. I scrolled through incorporation documents, equipment purchases, client cultivation. Even facing federal charges, Dad was planning resurrection. Why show me this? Sandra smiled sadly. Because 23 years ago, I believed his promises about leaving your mother, built my life around a future that existed only in his words. When I finally recognized the manipulation, I started documenting everything. Consider this my apology to the family I helped betray. You were manipulated too, I said carefully. Manipulation requires willing blindness. I saw what I wanted until reality became undeniable. She stood to leave. Your father recruits through charisma and discards through cruelty. Don't let him rebuild. The employees he'll hurt next deserve better. After she left, I shared the intelligence with our legal team. Catherine Walsh whistled appreciatively. He's been busy. These shell companies are sophisticated, technically legal until he violates the non-compete. Then we make sure he can't. I turned to Madison. Every innovation we implement, patent it. Every client relationship, lock it down. Every potential employee, recruit them first. Scorched earth, Madison asked. Preventive care. We're not destroying, we're protecting. The strategy required delicate execution. We couldn't appear vindictive while defending against someone intent on corporate vengeance. Public sympathy still partially sided with the betrayed father narrative conservative media pushed. That changed when Jennifer Barnes's full testimony leaked. Not through us, we suspected Dad's own lawyers hoping to discredit her before trial. Instead, the detailed accounts of systematic fraud, the casualness with which he'd stolen from employees' pension funds, the jokes about stupid investors trusting him, it shattered any remaining reputation. The most damaging revelation was personal. Jennifer had recorded conversations where Dad discussed his family with contempt that shocked even hardened investigators. Madison was his show pony, too stupid to think independently. I was the failed investment useful only for marrying well. Mom was his decorative necessity, too weak to leave. Madison heard the recordings in Catherine's office, professional composure crumbling, as Dad's voice dismissed her achievements as lucky genetics, not real intelligence. I held her while she sobbed years of seeking approval from someone incapable of giving it finally computing. He never saw us, she whispered. We were just props in his performance. Now we're the directors, I reminded her, and his show is canceled. The recordings shifted public opinion decisively. Employees who'd remained neutral came forward with their own stories. The janitor Dad had fired for suggesting energy-efficient lighting. The accountant terminated for maternity leave. The sales manager demoted for refusing to golf at whites-only clubs. Each testimony built our case for transformation. Apex Industries wasn't just acquiring a company, we were liberating a workforce. Marcus Williams visited during this transition, touring our integrated facilities with approval. You've exceeded every projection, but success brings new dangers. Hostile takeovers attract hostile responses. His warning proved prophetic. The next morning, protesters surrounded our headquarters. Signs reading, "Family values under attack" and "Daughters destroy dynasty" blocked entrances. Conservative activists, funded by sources we could guess, performed outrage for cameras. "Let them exhaust themselves," I instructed security. "Document everything but don't engage. Their theater needs audience participation." Madison took a different approach. She ordered pizza delivered to the protesters, attaching notes. "You're fighting for family values. So are we. Every employee here has a family to feed. Join us in protecting them." Half the protesters abandoned their posts for lunch. The gesture's simple humanity undermined their narrative better than any corporate statement. But Dad wasn't finished. From federal custody awaiting trial, he orchestrated media appearances through his lawyer. The story shifted again, mental breakdown caused by ungrateful family, temporary lapses in judgment, while building American success. He presented medical evaluations suggesting stress-induced decision-making impairment. "He's angling for reduced sentences," Catherine explained, painting himself as victim of circumstances. Then we create new circumstances. I convened our communications team. Every positive change at Whitfield, publicize it. Every job saved, every innovation implemented, every life improved. Show what competent leadership accomplishes. The campaign was subtle but effective. Local news covered our apprenticeship programs, placing veterans in manufacturing careers. Business journals highlighted our sustainable practices, reducing costs and environmental impact. Employee testimonials emphasized respect and opportunity, replacing fear and stagnation. Mom emerged from her strategic absence to add her voice. She gave exactly one interview sitting in an undisclosed garden looking serene. Her words were measured, devastating in their simplicity. "I enabled Robert's behavior through silence. That was wrong. My daughters ended that silence through action. That was right. Apex Industries represents the values Whitfield Manufacturing was founded on but lost. I'm proud of what they're building from what he broke." She refused follow-up questions, disappearing again into her new life. But her blessing carried weight with fence-sitters who'd known our family's public facade. The true victory came from unexpected sources. Sterling Bank, stinging from their failed acquisition, offered Apex a comprehensive credit line at preferred rates. "Better to fund success than fight it," Harrison's father admitted through gritted teeth. His son had fled to European offices, the wedding humiliation following him across oceans. Competitors who'd celebrated Whitfield's struggles now approached us for partnerships. Our transparent practices and ethical standards attracted business from companies tired of old-school opacity. What started as family drama evolved into industry transformation. Yet challenges persisted. Dad's shadow company continued recruiting quietly, targeting employees bitter about change. Some Whitfield veterans resented new leadership, especially female leadership, despite improved conditions. Integration hiccups created temporary inefficiencies that critics magnified. Growing pains. Marcus counseled during one particularly difficult week. "Revolution is messy. Evolution takes time. You're attempting both simultaneously." I stood in Dad's former office, my office now watching second shift arrive. These workers trusted us with their livelihoods based on promises of better. The weight of that responsibility made acquisition feel less like victory and more like beginning. Madison joined me holding production reports showing record efficiency. "We're actually doing it," she marveled. "Building something better. We're trying, I corrected. Success isn't a destination. It's daily decisions to be better than yesterday. Outside, the protesters had long dispersed their funding, apparently exhausted. In their place, food trucks gathered to serve shift changes, small businesses thriving on our success. The ecosystem was healing, adapting to new leadership that fed rather than consumed. But in federal holding, a bitter man plotted comeback. The hostile takeover was complete, but the war for Whitfield's soul had only begun. The emergency board meeting was called for a Tuesday that would reshape everything. October rain-hammered conference room windows as Whitfield Manufacturing's directors assembled their faces reflecting the storm inside. I sat in the gallery's back row, officially there as family support, while secretly documenting every moment as Apex Industries' CEO. Board Chairman William Hartley gavelled the session to order with funeral solemnity. We're here to address the company's critical situation. Robert, the floor is yours. Dad stood slowly, orange jumpsuit replaced by the designer suit his lawyer had fought to allow. Federal custody had aged him 10 years and 2 months, but his arrogance remained untouched. He'd prepared a presentation blaming everyone except himself. Whitfield Manufacturing faces challenges. He began clicking through slides, showing declining revenues. But these are external forces, millennial competitors using venture capital to undercut honest pricing, disloyal clients prioritizing trendy metrics over proven quality, workers corrupted by entitlement culture. Excuse me, Director Sarah Chen interrupted. Did you just blame workers for the embezzlement charges you're facing? Dad's jaw tightened. Those charges are misunderstandings, complex financial structures interpreted by prosecutors who don't understand business. I understand business, Sarah continued calmly. I also understand fraud, which is why I've asked our CFO to present actual numbers, not this fiction. David Park entered my secret weapon, now Whitfield's truth teller. His presentation demolished Dad's narrative with surgical precision. The real revenue losses stemmed from client departures over quality failures. The workforce issues traced to toxic management. The financial complexity was simple theft. Furthermore, David clicked to a new slide. I've discovered systematic falsification of board reports going back 7 years. You've been lying to directors while looting the company. Board members erupted in crosstalk. Some had suspected irregularities but lacked proof. Others felt betrayed by someone they'd trusted. Dad tried interrupting, shouting about conspiracies and jealousy, but facts are stubborn things. Then William Hartley stood commanding silence through presence alone. The 70-year-old had served on Whitfield's board for 2 decades, recruited by my grandfather. His disappointment carried generational weight. Enough, Robert. We've been patient. We've made excuses. We've enabled through inaction. He pulled out a folder. What we haven't been is honest about solutions. The folder contained correspondence I recognized. My stomach dropped as William continued. 3 months ago, Apex Industries approached me privately. They offered to acquire Whitfield's debt modernize operations and retain all employees. I'll now ask their CEO to present formally. Every head swiveled as I stood no longer hiding in galleries or shadows. The walk to the presentation podium felt like crossing decades of deference. Dad's face progressed from confusion to recognition to rage as pieces clicked. No, he breathed. You can't be. I am. I confirmed, voice steadier than my hands. Apex Industries is mine. Has been for over a year. While you were destroying this company through ego, I was building its replacement through innovation. The presentation I gave was 18 months of work condensed to 30 minutes. Every slide showed what modern manufacturing could achieve. Sustainable materials reducing costs by 40%. Automation that enhanced rather than replaced human creativity. Client testimonials praising reliability and respect. Apex Industries has already absorbed 60% of Whitfield's lost contracts, I explained. We've hired dozens of your former employees offering wages and working conditions that attract rather than trap talent. Our success isn't theoretical, it's proven. Madison stood next, revealing her role as CTO. She detailed technological improvements Dad had rejected, now flourishing under supportive leadership. Her pride in our achievements overshadowed any anxiety about family betrayal. "This is conspiracy," Dad erupted, unable to contain himself longer. "My own daughter's plotting with board members, stealing—" "Sit down, Robert," William commanded. "Your time is over." But Dad's control had snapped completely. He lunged across the conference table. Whether at me or the board, I'll never know. Security intervened federal marshals, restraining him as threats poured out. He'd destroy us all, sue everyone into bankruptcy, burn down facilities before letting ungrateful women run them. The spectacle was being live-streamed by a junior board member who'd secretly activated his phone. Within minutes, Robert Whitfield's complete meltdown went viral. The careful image he'd cultivated for decades shattered in real time. After marshals removed him, the room settled into shocked silence. Directors who'd known my father for decades struggled to process the transformation from leader to liability. "I believe," William said carefully, "we have a motion to consider. Apex Industries has offered to acquire Whitfield Manufacturing entirely. Given current circumstances, I move for immediate vote." The discussion that followed was surprisingly brief. Some directors questioned my experience. Others worried about family dynamics affecting operations. But when alternatives were weighed, bankruptcy, liquidation, or Sterling Bank's circling vultures, the choice became clear. All in favor. 11 hands raised, 2 abstentions from directors too close to my father for comfort, 1 opposition from his longtime golf partner who stormed out rather than witness the coup's completion. Motion carries. Congratulations, Miss Whitfield. Apex Industries now owns Whitfield Manufacturing. I signed papers with hands that barely trembled, officially taking control of the company I'd been raised to admire and learn to pity. Madison hugged me as board members offered cautious congratulations. But the masks hadn't finished falling. William asked everyone except family to leave, then revealed another folder. "Your mother asked me to give you this once the acquisition completed." Inside were documents that recontextualized everything. Mom hadn't just owned 51% through the prenup. She'd been acquiring shares quietly for years, using inheritance from her father that Dad never knew existed. Patricia controlled 73% by the end, William explained. She could have taken over any time but knew Robert would destroy everything out of spite, so she waited, documenting his crimes while letting him hang himself. She knew I was building Apex. She suspected. "Your mother sees more than she reveals. When you approached me, she confirmed her support but asked, I keep her involvement secret." He smiled sadly. "Patricia Whitfield is the most patient strategist I've ever encountered. She planned this ending before you graduated college." The weight of generational manipulation felt overwhelming. Mom had spent decades positioning pieces using even her daughters as unwitting pawns in longer games. The comfortable narrative of oppressed wife taking delayed revenge crumbled into something more complex. Madison voiced what I was thinking. Were we ever more than chess pieces to either parent? William considered carefully. "Your mother loved you enough to ensure you'd have choices. Your father loved himself too much to let you make them. Draw your own conclusions about which is true parenting." We left the boardroom as owners of our birthright and prisoners of our history. Outside media had gathered, drawn by the live-streamed meltdown. Questions flew about family betrayal, female leadership, and corporate coups. I gave only one statement. Apex Industries is committed to preserving American manufacturing through innovation, integrity, and inclusion. Whitfield employees have nothing to fear from this transition except outdated management practices. Thank you. That evening, I stood in Whitfield's executive office, my office now in 2 companies, reading congratulations mixed with condemnations. Business leaders praised the smooth acquisition. Conservative commentators decried the destruction of traditional values. Employees sent cautious messages of hope tinged with uncertainty. Madison found me there clutching her own burden of messages. Harrison's family is spinning this as validation. If Whitfield women betray family, Sterling Bank was right to attempt takeover. Let them spin, we have work to do. But she wasn't finished. One of Dad's shell companies made an offer to Jensen Properties, the industrial complex next to our main facility. If he gets it, he can establish competing operations literally next door. I pulled up property records confirming the threat. How much is he offering? 20% above market, using funds we can't trace yet. Even facing federal charges, Dad was maneuvering. The masks had fallen, but the face underneath was still fighting. This war wasn't over. It had barely begun. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was simple. Congratulations on the acquisition. We should talk about your father's hidden assets. Patricia. Mom had finally surfaced. Whatever game she'd been playing was entering its next phase. I showed Madison the message, both of us realizing the full implications. She's not done, Madison whispered. Neither are we, I replied. We'd removed the masks. Now we had to face what lived beneath them. Mom's chosen meeting location spoke volumes. The abandoned Whitfield family cabin where we'd spent summers before success poisoned simplicity. I drove 3 hours through November. Frost Madison beside me, both of us silent with anticipation. The woman who'd orchestrated our lives from shadows was finally ready to emerge. She waited on the porch wrapped in cashmere that cost more than most cars, looking somehow younger than when she'd vanished. Freedom suited Patricia Whitfield, or whatever name she used now. My daughters? She said, simply embracing us with warmth that felt genuine despite everything we'd learned. You've exceeded even my highest hopes. Inside, she'd prepared tea with the same precision that apparently governed her life strategies. We sat around the scarred wooden table where Dad once taught us poker-fitting metaphor for a family of hidden hands. You're angry, Mom observed. You have every right. I used you both as pieces in a very long game. Were we ever more than that? Madison's question carried years of doubt. Mom considered carefully. You were everything. Every move I made was to ensure you'd have choices I didn't. But yes, I positioned you strategically. Love and manipulation aren't mutually exclusive in desperate circumstances. She produced a leather journal, pages dense with handwriting. Your grandfather saw what Robert was beneath the charm. He created safeguards in the prenup and initial corporate structure. When he died, I inherited more than money. I inherited responsibility to preserve what he built. So you stayed with a man you knew was destroying it, I challenged. I stayed to prevent worse destruction. Robert with partial control was manageable. Robert divorced with spite, and resources would have salted the earth. She turned pages showing documentation. Every mistress who could have sued, I paid off. Every embezzlement that could have surfaced early, I covered. Every disaster he created, I contained. Enabling him, Madison accused. Controlling him, Mom corrected, while building alternatives. Aubrey, your business education wasn't accidental. I guided your interests through careful exposure. Madison, your engineering focus came from toys. I selected programs I suggested. I shaped you both as weapons against what I couldn't defeat directly. The manipulation's depth was breathtaking. Our entire lives had been orchestrated, each choice, feeling free while following invisible rails. Yet looking back, those rails had led us to strength, capability, and ultimately victory. The hidden assets, I prompted, needing to focus on present rather than past. Mom smiled grimly. Robert thinks he's clever with offshore accounts and shell companies. He learned those tricks from me. I've been documenting every transfer for 15 years. She handed us flash drives. Complete records. Account numbers, passwords, transaction histories, everything prosecutors need to freeze his resources. Why not give this to authorities directly? Madison asked. Because you need leverage for what's coming. Robert won't accept defeat. He'll use these funds to destroy what you've built unless you strike first. Mom stood moving to windows overlooking the frozen lake. Jensen Properties is already his. The contracts were signed through proxies yesterday. My heart sank. Dad would establish competing operations next door, poaching employees and clients through proximity and spite. Even from federal custody, he was fighting. There's more, Mom continued. He's reaching out to former employees you didn't hire, promising them executive positions in his new venture, feeding their resentment about female leadership, building an army of the dismissed. We'll compete on merit, I insisted. Our practices against his practices include arson, Mom interrupted quietly. I found communications between Robert and some very dangerous people. If he can't win legitimately, he'll ensure you lose through other means. The cabin fell silent except for wind against windows. Our business victory suddenly felt fragile against someone willing to burn everything rather than lose. What do you suggest? Madison asked our mother, the master strategist. Preemptive strike. Use the asset information to freeze his accounts before he can fund operations. File civil suits that will take years to resolve. Tie up Jensen Properties in legal challenges. She turned from the window. Destroy him completely before he destroys you. Become him to beat him. I stood abruptly. No, that's not who we are. It's who you need to be to survive. It's who you needed to be, I countered. 30 years of playing his games by his rules. We're writing new rules. Madison joined me. We'll handle Dad's threats legally, ethically, transparently. If he commits crimes, we'll report them. If he competes fairly, we'll outperform him, but we won't become poison to fight poison. Mom studied us with an expression I couldn't read. Pride, disappointment, concern. You're naive if you think goodness defeats corruption. We're hopeful that excellence defeats mediocrity, I replied, and that employees given respect and opportunity won't follow someone offering only revenge and familiarity. The conversation continued through afternoon into evening. Mom shared intelligence she'd gathered, some useful, some terrifying. Dad's prison communications with former associates who blamed us for his downfall. The conservative fundraising building around his cause. The narrative war positioning him as victim of feminist destruction. You can't fight narrative with nobility, Mom warned. Public opinion shapes reality more than truth does. Then we'll shape better narratives, Madison declared. Every success story from Whitfield employees, every innovation improving lives, every community benefit from ethical business. We'll drown his victimhood in our victories. As darkness fell, Mom made dinner with the same precision she'd applied to destroying her husband. We ate in complicated silence, 3 women bound by blood and betrayal, trying to find connection beyond conspiracy. I'm proud of you both, she said finally. You took the tools I gave you and built something I couldn't imagine. That's evolution. That's hope. What will you do now? I asked. Travel. Study. Maybe find out who Patricia is when she's not managing Robert's disasters. She smiled sadly. 40 years of marriage doesn't leave much individual identity. Time to discover if there's a person under the strategy. We helped clear dishes, mundane domesticity, strange after revelations. As we prepared to leave, Mom pulled out one final folder. Your inheritance, she announced. Not money you've earned your own. These are letters from your grandfather. He wrote them before he died, predicting this moment. His faith in you both was absolute, even when you were children. Madison and I held sealed envelopes labeled in grandfather's shaky handwriting. Whatever wisdom they contained would wait for private moments. One more thing, Mom said at the door. Robert has a son, Connor, from his first affair 20 years ago. The boy man now has been kept away with payments, but those will stop with asset freezes. He'll surface soon. Be ready. Another bomb in a day of explosions. A half-brother we'd never known existed, potentially carrying Dad's grudges and genes into our carefully constructed future. The drive home was quiet, each of us processing revelations. Madison finally spoke near the city limits. Do you think we can really build something clean from foundations this poisoned? We have to try, I said. Otherwise, what was the point of any of it? Back at Apex headquarters, security reported increased suspicious activity around the perimeter. Cars driving slowly, photographing entrances. New job applications from people with thin resumes but military backgrounds. The war Mom predicted was mobilizing. I convened an emergency leadership meeting sharing what we'd learned. Janet Morrison took notes with grim efficiency. David Park ran financial scenarios. Our team of formerly dismissed Whitfield employees understood the stakes viscerally. He wants to recreate the old Whitfield, Janet observed. The one where people like us knew our place. We can't let that happen. We won't, I promised. But we fight with our values, not his. Security increases legal preparations, and most importantly, continued excellence. Every day we succeed ethically proves his methods obsolete. That night, alone in my office, I opened Grandfather's letter. His words reached across death with startling prescience. Aubrey, by now you've discovered what Robert is and what Patricia hid. Don't judge either too harshly. Weak men often mask fear with cruelty. Strong women sometimes survive through subterfuge. You have the chance to be neither, and both strong enough to show weakness, clever enough to choose honesty. Build something worthy of the hopes I place in you. I folded the letter carefully, adding his faith to the weight I already carried. Tomorrow would bring new battles in this war between old and new spite and hope the past's poison and future's possibility. But tonight I had work to do, strategies to plan, employees to protect, an empire to strengthen against the storm we all knew was coming. Dad might have hidden assets and bitter allies, but we had something more powerful people who believed in what we were building. In the end, that would determine which Whitfield legacy survived. The formal transfer ceremony was scheduled for December 1st, a date chosen for its symbolic weight the first day of the last month, marking endings and beginnings simultaneously. What should have been a simple signing became corporate theater when Mom emerged from her strategic absence to make it unforgettable. She arrived at Whitfield Manufacturing's headquarters in a black town car, stepping out in a severe suit that meant business. The assembled media, expecting routine coverage of an acquisition, suddenly had their story's protagonist. Patricia Whitfield had been invisible for so long that her presence electrified the atmosphere. Mrs. Whitfield, where have you been? Are you supporting your daughter's takeover? What's your response to your husband's arrest? She walked past them all with serene purpose, her silence more commanding than any statement. Madison and I waited in the boardroom documents prepared when she entered with an additional briefcase we hadn't expected. Before we proceed, Mom announced to the room of lawyers and board members, there's the matter of majority ownership. She produced papers that made our corporate attorney, Catherine Walsh, inhale sharply. You've held 73% all along. 76% actually, Mom corrected. I've been quietly acquiring shares from minority holders for 2 decades. Robert never checked the math behind holding companies. His assumption that I couldn't understand complex finances was useful. The revelation shifted everything. We hadn't needed to maneuver or negotiate. Mom could have handed us the company any time. Instead, she'd let us earn it, prove ourselves capable of taking what she'd preserved. Why the elaborate dance? Madison asked what everyone was thinking. Because inherited power corrupts differently than earned power, Mom replied. You needed to build Apex to understand creation before destruction, to know you could succeed without Whitfield before taking responsibility for it. She signed transfer documents with flourishes that spoke of long-anticipated satisfaction. Each signature diminished her legal connection to the empire she'd protected through decades of careful sabotage. There's one condition, she added after signing. Connor McBride, Robert's son, from his first affair. He's 22, just graduated from engineering school. I've been sending him money for education, keeping him away from Robert's influence. That ends today. She slid a photograph across the table. A young man with Dad's jawline but kinder eyes stared back. our half-brother hidden like a shameful secret, now entering our complicated equation. He knows nothing about the family business or his father's crimes, Mom continued. I've arranged for him to interview at Apex next week. Not for executive positions, let him earn advancement. But he deserves the chance Robert denied him. You want us to hire Dad's secret son while Dad plots against us? I struggled with the logic. I want you to be better than the patterns that created this mess. Connor isn't responsible for his origins. Judge him on merit, not blood. The transfer proceeded with surreal efficiency. By noon, Apex Industries officially owned Whitfield Manufacturing. Mom's shares gave us unassailable control. The board approved our integration plans, unanimously eager for stability after months of scandal. But the real drama waited outside. Mom had arranged a press conference, her first public statement since the wedding disaster. She stood at the podium like she'd been born for this moment, probably because she'd been planning it for years. Ladies and gentlemen, today marks not a changing of guard, but a restoration of values. My daughters haven't stolen a company, they've saved it from the slow suicide of obsolete thinking and criminal leadership. She spoke for 20 minutes, each word precisely chosen to reshape narrative. Robert wasn't a victim, but a cautionary tale. Madison and I weren't rebellious daughters, but innovative leaders. Apex Industries wasn't destroying tradition, but evolving it. I stayed silent too long, she admitted with calculated vulnerability. Enabled through inaction. My daughters found courage I lacked. They built what I could only preserve. Whitfield Manufacturing's future is finally as bright as its past was supposed to be. The masterclass in public relations left reporters scrambling to adjust storylines. Mom had given them a better drama, the enabling wife who'd secretly saved everything, passing torches to daughters who'd forged new paths. It was partially true, which made it entirely believable. After the conference, she pulled us aside privately. The media war is yours now. I've tilted the battlefield, but you must win it. Will you stay? Madison asked. Help us integrate operations. No, my presence would undermine your authority. Besides, she smiled with something like peace. I've spent 40 years managing Whitfield crises. Time to discover who I am without that burden. She left that afternoon for Europe, promising only to remain reachable for emergencies. Her departure felt like another abandonment until I realized it was actually trust. She'd given us everything and gotten out of the way the ultimate parental gift. Connor McBride arrived the following Tuesday, nervous energy barely contained in an ill-fitting suit. He had Dad's height, but carried himself with uncertainty rather than arrogance. His resume showed solid education internships at reputable firms and no mention of his parentage. Thank you for considering me, he began formally. I know my application came through unusual channels. Every application here is unusual, I replied, studying him for signs of Dad's poison. Tell me why manufacturing interests you. His answer surprised me. Connor spoke passionately about sustainable production, about America's need to innovate, rather than offshore about engineering's responsibility to enhance human dignity, rather than replace it. Either he was an excellent actor or genuinely believed in principles Dad had mocked. Madison conducted the technical interview, returning impressed. He's brilliant, not just competent innovative. His senior project involved biodegradable composites that could revolutionize packaging. But he's Dad's son, I voiced our shared concern. So are we, Madison countered. Biology isn't destiny. We proved that. We hired Connor for our engineering development program, deciding Mom's faith deserved reciprocation. His first weeks passed without incident beyond exceptional performance. He arrived early, stayed late, and treated everyone from janitors to executives with equal respect. The revelation came during a team lunch when someone mentioned the Whitfield acquisition. Connor's fork paused midair. Whitfield? That's the company Robert Whitfield founded. You know him? Janet Morrison asked carefully. He's my biological father, though I've never met him. My mom said he wasn't interested in children from outside arrangements. His bitter laugh carried years of rejection. I used to research him obsessively, trying to understand why I wasn't worth knowing. Finally realized the fault was his, not mine. The table fell silent until I spoke. He's our biological father, too, which makes you our half-brother. Connor's face cycled through shock understanding and something like relief. You're the daughters he bragged about in business magazines, the ones getting perfect educations and bright futures. He laughed again, less bitter. Guess that didn't work out as planned. Nothing with Robert Whitfield works as planned, Madison said. Welcome to the family of disappointments who exceeded expectations. That evening, Connor found me alone in my office. Did you know when you hired me, Mom told us she thought you deserved chances Dad denied you. Patricia Whitfield arranged this. He shook his head in wonder. She sent money all through school, never asked for anything, just insisted I graduate. I thought she was guilty about the affair. Now you understand she plays long games, though I think with you she was just being kind. Connor proved valuable beyond engineering brilliance. His existence had taught him empathy for the dismissed patients with the overlooked and drive to prove worth beyond birthright. He became bridge between old guard Whitfield employees and new Apex energy trusted by both because he belonged to neither. Dad learned about Connor's employment during a prison phone call Madison recorded. His rage was incandescent. The son he'd hidden was now working for the daughters who'd betrayed him. Another piece of his past turned against him. I'll destroy them all, he ranted to his lawyer. Every ungrateful child, every traitorous woman. They'll beg for mercy before I'm done. But his resources were dwindling. Mom's intelligence had helped prosecutors freeze 17 offshore accounts. His shadow company struggled to launch without funding. Former employees he'd courted chose stable jobs at Apex over uncertain promises from a federal defendant. The integration of Whitfield and Apex proceeded with surprising smoothness. Employees who'd suffered under Dad's management flourished with respect and resources. Production efficiency increased 40% in 3 months. Client satisfaction scores reached record highs. We're actually doing it, David Park reported at quarter's end. Profitable, ethical, and innovative. The trifecta Dad said was impossible. But success attracted new challenges. Competitors who dismissed us as family drama now recognized genuine threat. Larger corporations began circling, some offering partnership, others plotting acquisition. The business world had noticed Whitfield's transformation and wanted pieces of our success. Let them circle, I decided. We're not for sale at any price. This isn't just business anymore. It's proof that principles and profit can coexist. Madison nodded agreement, then added quietly, check your personal email, something you need to see. The message was from an address I didn't recognize, but the content made authorship clear. Dad had written from federal custody, somehow circumventing monitored communications. His words dripped with venom disguised as paternal concern. My daughters, you think you've won, but the war has barely started. Every enemy I've made over 30 years will come for you. Every mistake will be magnified, every weakness exploited. You wanted the throne. Enjoy defending it against wolves you can't imagine. I'll be watching your fall with satisfaction that prison can't diminish. Blood matters, girls, and you've spilled ours. I forwarded it to Catherine Walsh for documentation, then deleted it from my mind, if not my memory. Dad could plot from his cell, but we had an empire to run and principles to uphold. That night, I stood where his executive desk once dominated, now replaced by collaborative workspace. The transfer of power was complete, not just legal documents, but philosophical revolution. Where one man's ego had ruled, dozens of voices now contributed. Where fear had motivated respect, now inspired. Madison joined me, raising coffee cups in a toast. To hostile takeovers that became healing transformations. To family businesses that finally serve families, I added. Connor appeared with his own cup, completing our unlikely triumvirate. To disappointing fathers by succeeding wildly. We drank to that 3 products of Robert Whitfield's carelessness, who'd chosen creation over his destruction. The empire he'd built on others' backs now stood on its own. Merit transferred to hands that understood power's purpose was elevation, not domination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Dad's threats weren't entirely empty. Business sharks did circle. Integration growing pains persisted. But tonight in offices that had echoed with tyranny, hope had firmly taken residence. The transfer was complete. Now came the harder task, proving we deserved it. The FBI arrived at dawn on a Tuesday that would reveal the depths of Dad's corruption. Not just financial crimes, but a web of malice that made previous revelations seem quaint. I was reviewing production reports when Catherine Walsh called her usually calm voice tight with urgency. They found more than fraud, Aubrey. You need to see this immediately. The federal building's conference room felt sterile, fluorescent lights, harsh on evidence that turned my stomach. Lead investigator Special Agent Diana Martinez spread documents like tarot cards predicting disaster. Your father maintained detailed records of what he called insurance policies, she began, not financial instruments, leverage against anyone who might threaten him. The files contained photographs, recordings, documentation of affairs, addictions, and financial struggles among competitors, employees, and board members. Dad had spent decades collecting secrets like weapons, ready to destroy anyone who crossed him. This is industrial blackmail, Agent Martinez continued. But it gets worse. We found correspondence with private investigators, some with flexible ethics. He was building psychological profiles on both of you for years. She showed me reports dating back to my college years. Every relationship documented, every failure cataloged, every vulnerability assessed for future exploitation. Madison's file was equally invasive, including speculation about her sexuality, based on her reluctance to date Dad's approved candidates. He was planning to use this if we ever challenged him, Madison asked, voice hollow. He was using it, Martinez corrected. 3 of your Apex employees received anonymous packages last month containing compromising information about their pasts. The message was clear: leave Apex or be exposed. My mind raced. Who we need to protect? They've already come forward. Your culture of transparency apparently extends to mutual protection. Each employee reported the blackmail attempt immediately. Janet Morrison, I realized. She'd seemed troubled recently, but attributed it to integration stress. David Park had been unusually security conscious. Even Marcus Williams had mentioned old ghosts surfacing. There's something else, Martinez said carefully. The life insurance policies your mother mentioned. We found 7 more. Various employees and competitors who died in accidents over the past 15 years. We can't prove murder, but the pattern is suspicious. The room spun slightly. I'd known Dad was ruthless, but this suggested actual evil. Madison gripped my hand as Martinez continued the horrific inventory. We also discovered he hired actors to infiltrate your company, some as employees, others as clients. They were feeding him intelligence while creating subtle sabotage. We've identified 4 so far. She provided names and photos. My stomach dropped, recognizing 2 recent hires I'd personally approved. Their performances had been flawless, eager workers, grateful for opportunities. Instead, they were Dad's eyes and hands inside our walls. We'll handle arrests quietly, Martinez assured us. But you need to audit everything they touched. Assume compromised systems, leaked strategies, potential dormant sabotage. The meeting continued for 3 hours, each revelation worse than the last. Dad hadn't just been a toxic leader or financial criminal. He'd been constructing a system of control that would let him destroy any threat from prison or freedom. Why keep such detailed records? Madison wondered. It's self-incriminating. Narcissism, Martinez explained. He needed documentation of his cleverness. Plus, blackmail only works if you can prove you have dirt. These files were his arsenal's inventory. We left federal custody in stunned silence. The empire we'd inherited wasn't just financially compromised, it was ethically radioactive. every relationship potentially surveilled, every success possibly sabotaged, every person near us potentially threatened. Back at Apex, I called an emergency all-hands meeting. Complete honesty felt like the only path through this minefield. We've discovered Robert Whitfield engaged in systematic blackmail and surveillance. I announced to 300 assembled employees. Some of you may have been targeted. Some may be targets now. We're implementing immediate security measures and offering support to anyone feeling threatened. The response surprised me. Instead of panic, solidarity emerged. Employees shared their own experiences with Dad's manipulation. Support groups formed spontaneously. IT volunteered to sweep systems for surveillance. Legal offered pro bono services to anyone being blackmailed. Janet Morrison stood up. He tried to shame me for a bankruptcy 20 years ago when my ex-husband's gambling destroyed our finances. But I'm not ashamed. I survived and rebuilt. That's strength, not weakness. Others followed her lead secrets, losing power in the light of community. By meeting's end, Dad's carefully collected leverage had become testimonies of resilience. Connor's reaction was perhaps most revealing. He found me after the meeting face grave. Mom always said he was dangerous, not just absent. Now I understand why she worked so hard to keep me invisible. Did he ever contact you? Once. A letter when I turned 18 offering to acknowledge me if I provided information about Mom's life. I burned it. He paused. I thought I hated him for abandoning me. Now I'm grateful he did. The security audit revealed the infiltrators' damage was mostly intelligence gathering rather than operational sabotage. They documented our strategies, client relationships, and internal dynamics, but hadn't corrupted systems. Small mercy in an ocean of violation. More disturbing were the psychological profiles Dad had commissioned on Madison and me. Expert analysts had studied our decisions, predicted our responses, identified our breaking points. One report, chillingly accurate in its assessment, Aubrey values ethical success above financial gain, exploit by forcing choices between principle and profit. Madison craves parental approval despite rebellion, manipulate through conditional acceptance. He knew us better than we knew ourselves, Madison said, reading her profile. Every strength mapped to a weakness, every value turned to vulnerability. But he's still lost, I reminded her. All that knowledge, all those weapons, and we still won. Because he understood our psychology, but not our character. The next weeks brought cascading revelations as investigators followed Dad's paper trails. Bribes to city inspectors ensuring competitors faced regulatory harassment, honey traps set for rival executives, even a plan to frame Thomas Chen for embezzlement if Odyssey Automotive had renewed their contract. Each discovery required response, lawyers to contact victims, security to enhance, therapists to support traumatized employees. The cost of cleaning Dad's corruption exceeded the monetary theft he'd committed. We should walk away, Madison suggested one exhausted evening. Sell to a corporation without history. Start fresh somewhere clean. There is nowhere clean, I replied. Every success has shadows. The difference is whether we let shadows define us or drive us toward light. Connor, working late on sustainable packaging innovations, looked up from his desk. Besides, quitting would prove him right, that we're too weak for the throne we claimed. He was right. Dad's prison communications, now fully monitored, showed gleeful anticipation of our collapse under revealed weight. He expected the exposure of his sins to bury us in their stench. Instead, we were composting them into fertilizer for something better. The transformation wasn't easy. Some employees quit unable to work where they'd been surveilled. Some clients distanced themselves from the scandal. Stock value dropped 20% before stabilizing. Every day brought decisions between expedient choices and ethical ones. But unexpected support emerged too. Competitors Dad had sabotaged offered partnerships. Employees he'd blackmailed became our fiercest advocates. Communities that had suffered his predatory practices celebrated our reforms. From poison soil, healthier growth emerged. The most significant support came from an unexpected source. Judge Harrison, presiding over Dad's criminal trial, summoned Madison and me to chambers. "Your father's attorney is pushing for a plea deal," he informed us. "Reduced sentence in exchange for revealing where remaining hidden assets and blackmail materials are stored. As victims, you have input on acceptance." "What do you recommend?" I asked. "Justice suggests maximum punishment. Pragmatism suggests getting those weapons out of circulation. Your employees deserve protection from future exposure." He studied us carefully. "But this is your decision. You've earned the right to it." Madison and I conferred privately. Dad offering information meant he had more hidden arsenals. Leaving them undiscovered risked future devastation. But dealing with him felt like negotiating with terrorism. "We'll accept," I decided, "on condition that all materials are destroyed under supervision. No copies, no leaks, no leverage remaining. Complete disarmament." The deal proceeded with appropriate mistrust. Dad revealed 17 additional caches of blackmail material, 3 more offshore accounts, and a network of corrupted officials still on his payroll. The scope of his shadow operations dwarfed even our expanded understanding. But with each revelation, his power diminished. Sunlight disinfected what darkness had fostered. Officials were arrested. Accounts were frozen. Blackmail materials were incinerated. The infrastructure of intimidation collapsed systematically. During one supervised call, Dad made a final attempt at manipulation. "You think you're heroes, but you're just lucky. I built that company from nothing. You inherited my work and call it your virtue." "We inherited your work," I agreed, "and chose to transform it rather than perpetuate it. That's not luck. That's decision. Every day we decide to be better than you taught us." His cursing followed me from the visiting room, but it sounded hollow. A king dethroned, realizing his kingdom had never required his cruelty to flourish. That night, I stood in the manufacturing facility watching third shift work with dignity Dad never provided. His unraveling hadn't destroyed us. It had freed us to build without his shadow looming. Madison joined me on the production floor. "Think we'll ever be free of his legacy?" "No," I admitted, "but we're already transforming it. That's better than freedom. That's alchemy." The unraveling continued as investigations expanded, but we'd survived the worst revelations. Dad's sins were fully exposed, their power to destroy neutralized by our refusal to be destroyed. In the end, his greatest weapon, shame, proved useless against people who'd learned that surviving shame created strength. Every employee he'd tried to blackmail became testament to resilience. Every secret he'd hoarded became story of overcoming. The empire of fear had finally fully unraveled. In its place, we were weaving something stronger, a community bound not by terror, but trust, not by secrets, but solidarity. The federal courthouse stood like a fortress of justice against March's cold rain. Dad's criminal trial had drawn national attention, the fallen executive whose own daughters had exposed his empire of corruption. Media painted it as Shakespearean tragedy, missing the simpler truth: consequences had finally caught consequences. I sat in the prosecution section with Madison and Connor, our presence both witness and wait. Mom had refused to attend, sending only a written statement. Robert Whitfield was given every opportunity to choose integrity. His choices were his own. May justice provide what marriage couldn't: accountability. Dad entered in shackles that clinked with each step, the sound echoing through marble halls. Prison had carved away his executive polish, leaving a man who looked exactly like what he was, bitter, entitled, and finally powerless. His eyes found ours across the courtroom, still expecting the deference we'd been trained to show. We gave him nothing but steady gazes. Prosecutor Sarah Chang opened with devastating efficiency. Robert Whitfield built an empire on others' backs, then used their bent spines as stepping stones to greater cruelty. Today, those backs straighten in testimony. Those voices silenced by fear will speak. Justice delayed is not justice denied. The parade of witnesses began with Janet Morrison. At 63, she commanded the courtroom with dignity Dad had tried to strip away. Her testimony covered 20 years of discrimination, each passed-over promotion, documented each belittling comment, recorded in journals she'd kept to stay sane. "He told me women's emotions made them unsuitable for leadership," she stated clearly. While he raged at employees weekly and called it passion, he confused his weakness for strength and our strength for weakness. David Park followed, detailing the financial fraud with precision that made jurors wince. Charts showed money flowing from pension funds to offshore accounts, from client payments to personal luxuries, from company coffers to mistress's silence. "The defendant didn't just steal money," David explained. "He stole futures, retirements, delayed medical procedures, postponed children's educations, compromised. Every dollar he took came from someone's dreams." The emotional peak arrived with testimonies from Dad's blackmail victims, competitors whose personal struggles he'd exploited, employees whose past mistakes became chains of control. Each story painted a portrait of calculated cruelty that shocked even cynical reporters. Marcus Williams took the stand with particular gravity. Dad's attempt to blackmail him had targeted his son's struggle with addiction information, gathered through private investigators and weaponized for leverage. "Robert knew my son had entered treatment," Marcus testified. "He sent photos of my boy at his lowest moments to my home where my wife opened them. The message was clear: oppose him, and everyone would see our private pain made public." "What did you do?" Chang asked. "I doubled down on mentoring his daughter. Because bullies expect fear to breed compliance, I chose defiance through support of what he feared most: competent women surpassing him." The defense's turn brought predictable strategies. Dad's attorney, William Frost, painted his client as a stressed executive, making poor decisions under pressure. Mental health evaluations suggested depression and anxiety. Character witnesses, what few remained, spoke of charitable donations and community involvement. "Robert Whitfield built a company that employed hundreds," Frost argued. "Yes, mistakes were made, but destroying this man serves no purpose except revenge disguised as justice." Then Dad took the stand against counsel's advice. His arrogance couldn't resist the spotlight, the chance to control narrative one more time. "I built Whitfield Manufacturing from nothing." He began voice-finding familiar rhythms of command. "Every success came from my vision, my sacrifice, my leadership. These people claiming victimhood were happy to collect paychecks from my efforts." Chang's cross-examination was surgical. "Your vision included defrauding investors. Complex financial structures were misinterpreted. Your sacrifice included stealing from pension funds, temporary reallocations during cash flow challenges. Your leadership included blackmailing employees." Dad's composure cracked. "They betrayed me, every one of them, taking my knowledge, my training, my opportunities, then turning against their benefactor." "So you admit to the blackmail." The trap sprung before Dad recognized it. His need to justify overwhelmed legal strategy. "I protected myself against ungrateful conspirators. My own daughters plotted my destruction while smiling at Sunday dinners. My wife documented private matters for decades. Employees I lifted from nothing forgot their place. Yes, I kept insurance against betrayal." The courtroom erupted. Frost objected frantically while reporters typed furiously. Judge Harrison gavelled for order, but damage was done. Dad had confessed in pursuit of vindication. Chang's closing argument wove together threads of testimony into a tapestry of systematic abuse. This wasn't temporary poor judgment, but decades of deliberate cruelty. Not stress-induced mistakes, but calculated campaigns of control. Robert Whitfield didn't fall from grace. He never possessed grace to fall from. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. We waited in a conference room, Connor pacing while Madison stared at rain-streaked windows. I reviewed quarterly reports, finding comfort in numbers that proved our success despite the chaos. Guilty on all counts. The words landed like benediction. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, extortion, blackmail, a litany of crimes that would ensure decades behind bars. Dad stood for sentencing, finally looking his age. Judge Harrison spoke with gravity appropriate to the moment. Mr. Whitfield, you were given privileges. Many dream of wealth, position, influence, family. You weaponized every gift into instruments of harm. This court sentences you to 25 years federal custody financial restitution to all victims and lifetime prohibition from executive positions upon release. Dad turned toward us as marshals approached. For a moment, his mask slipped entirely, revealing not the titan of industry, but a frightened man who'd confused fear for respect his entire life. "I made you strong," he called out. "Everything you are came from surviving me." "Everything we are," I replied quietly, "came from choosing to be better than you." They led him away, shackles clanking the same rhythm that had announced his arrival. The emperor of intimidation reduced to federal number, the king of controlling revealed as court jester in his own tragedy. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. We'd prepared statements, but Connor spoke first, unscripted. "Our father viewed relationships as transactions and people as possessions. We're building a future where that thinking dies with his generation. Apex Industries proves business can be both profitable and principled. Today proves justice eventually arrives." The questions came rapid fire about forgiveness, about family, about feelings watching our father convicted. Madison handled them with grace I couldn't muster. "We mourn the father we deserved, but celebrate justice for those he harmed. Healing begins with accountability." That evening, employees gathered at Apex headquarters, not summoned but drawn by shared experience. Janet Morrison had organized an impromptu celebration support group hybrid. People who'd testified shared stories of afterward relief. Others who'd suffered silently found voices among friends. 25 years, someone said. "He'll be almost 80 when released." "If he lives that long," another added, "men like him don't age well without power to prop them up." I circled through groups listening more than speaking. These people had risked retaliation to speak truth. Their courage had convicted him more than any evidence. They'd transformed from victims to victors through the simple act of testimony. Marcus Williams pulled me aside near evening's end. "You handled that with grace. Watching a parent's public destruction, even a destructive parent, can't be easy. Easier than watching him destroy others," I admitted. "At least this destruction serves justice." Connor overheard and joined us. "You know what's strange? I spent my childhood wondering why he didn't want me. Now I'm grateful he didn't. Imagine growing up under that influence directly." "We did," Madison said, approaching with drinks. "And look how well-adjusted we turned out. Only took complete corporate warfare and federal intervention to process our daddy issues." The bitter humor helped, as did the solidarity. We'd survived not just his abuse, but its exposure. The reckoning was complete, not just legal judgment, but emotional resolution. Later, alone in my office, I pulled up Dad's earliest emails about Apex Industries, his dismissal of another venture capital play that would fail within a year, his certainty that traditional methods would outlast innovation, his fundamental misunderstanding of what we were building. We hadn't just survived his predicted timeline. We'd transformed his company, exposed his crimes, and created the community he'd tried to prevent. Every employee he'd terrorized now worked with dignity. Every innovation he'd stifled now flourished. Every relationship he'd poisoned had been purified through transparency. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom watching verdict coverage from somewhere in Switzerland. "Justice served. Now serve something better. Build the future he feared, one where people matter more than power." I looked out at the production floor third shift beginning their work. In cells Dad had used for storage of blackmail materials, we now stored employee recognition awards. Where he'd hung portraits of himself, we displayed innovation timelines featuring every contributor. His executive bathroom had become a nursing room for new mothers. The reckoning was complete. Robert Whitfield would spend decades contemplating the empire he'd lost through cruelty. We'd spend those same decades proving kindness built stronger foundations. Justice had been served. Now it was time to serve something greater. 7 months after Dad's conviction, Apex Industries hummed with the energy of transformation realized. I stood before our 5th expansion announcement this time, different from the others. We weren't just growing, we were fundamentally reimagining what American manufacturing could be. Today we launched the Whitfield Apex Innovation Center. I announced to assembled employees, media, and community leaders. Not a monument to the past, but an incubator for futures where dignity and productivity dance together. The name choice had been Madison's idea. Whitfield represents where we came from, she'd argued. Apex shows where we're going. Both parts of our story deserve recognition. The hyphen between them carried the weight of transformation. Connor cut the ribbon with scissors designed by our apprenticeship program, former high school dropouts we'd trained in precision tooling. Their pride in contributing to this moment reflected everything we'd built from Dad's ruins. Inside the center glass walls revealed labs where innovation happened transparently. No more closed doors hiding brilliant ideas or crushing spirits. Janet Morrison led tours through facilities she'd designed, every detail reflecting lessons learned from decades of exclusion. This makerspace is available to all employees, she explained to visitors. From production floor to C-suite, everyone can prototype ideas. Innovation isn't limited by title or tenure. Madison demonstrated our patent-sharing program on massive screens. Traditional companies hoard intellectual property. We share it. Every patent developed here includes the inventor as co-owner. Your brilliance benefits you, not just the company. The financial impact was already evident. Employees who'd hidden ideas under Dad's regime were filing patents weekly. Their profit participation motivated excellence while ensuring fair compensation. Revolutionary concepts emerged from unexpected sources: a janitor's efficiency improvement, a security guard's safety innovation. This is unsustainable. Harrison Sterling Jr. announced loudly enough to ensure reporters heard. He'd returned from European exile to salvage family reputation, attending our launch to demonstrate no hard feelings about the failed wedding. "You're giving away competitive advantages," he continued with practiced concern. "Shareholders won't tolerate such generosity long term." "We are the shareholders," Madison replied smoothly, "and our tolerance for investing in human potential is infinite. Besides, our returns speak louder than your theories." She wasn't exaggerating. Apex Industries had posted 40% growth over 7 months. Client retention reached 98%. Employee satisfaction scores broke industry records. Turns out, treating people with respect was profitable. Revelation only shocking to those who'd never tried it. The transformation extended beyond business metrics. Mom emerged from her travels, transformed herself, attending the launch in clothes that reflected adventure rather than armor. She'd spent months hiking through Nepal, studying art in Florence, rediscovering the woman Robert had tried to erase. "I'm proud of what you've built," she told us privately, "but prouder of who you've become. You took poison and made medicine. That's alchemy I never mastered." "You gave us the tools," I reminded her. "I gave you survival skills. You chose to thrive instead. That's entirely your achievement." Connor's integration into our family had been the year's unexpected gift. He brought perspective we'd lacked, someone who'd grown without Dad's direct influence, but understood its shadow. His innovations in sustainable packaging were revolutionizing our environmental impact. "I've been thinking," he said during our family dinner, "a new tradition replacing the performative Sunday meals of our past. What if we created a foundation for other forgotten children, kids whose parents prioritized power over presence?" "Define forgotten," Madison prompted. "Children of affairs like me, kids disowned for not meeting expectations, teenagers aging out of foster care, anyone whose potential gets dismissed because their origins are inconvenient." His passion reflected personal understanding. We could provide scholarships, mentorship, connections. What Mom did for me, systematized. The idea resonated deeply. Within weeks, the Whitfield Apex Second Chances Foundation was established. Connor led it with energy that suggested purpose finally found. Our first scholarship recipients included a dozen young people whose stories echoed themes we knew too well dismissed, diminished but not defeated. The business world watched our experiments with skepticism evolving to interest. Harvard Business School sent researchers to study our radical transparency model. MIT examined our innovation-sharing practices. Wharton analyzed our financial structures that prioritized stakeholder value over shareholder extraction. "You're rewriting rules," one professor told me during their visit. "But can it scale? Can principles survive growth?" "Only one way to find out," I replied. "Keep growing while holding tight to what matters." The test came sooner than expected. A Fortune 500 manufacturer approached with an acquisition offer that made everyone blink. They wanted to buy Apex Industries for a number that would make us all wealthy beyond imagination. "Think about it," their CEO urged during a private meeting. "You've proven the concept. Let us scale it while you enjoy rewards of your courage." Madison, Connor, and I discussed the offer for exactly 5 minutes before refusing. Apex wasn't just a company anymore. It was a community, a promise, a proof of concept that needed protecting. Selling would mean trusting someone else with our values. We'd seen how that ended. Instead, we countered with partnership proposals. Share our practices, license our innovations, collaborate on transformation, but maintain independence. Some accepted expanding our influence without compromising control. The real victory came through employee ownership expansion. We restructured equity so every worker held meaningful stakes in our success. Profit sharing became profit owning. The announcement sparked celebration that lasted days. "My daughter can attend college debt-free," one production worker told me through tears, "because I own part of what I build. Do you understand what that means? My family's future changed because you changed how business works." I understood completely. Generational wealth had traditionally concentrated among few while many generated it. We were diluting that concentration, spreading prosperity across contributors rather than collectors. Dad learned about our successes through prison communications. His responses grew increasingly unhinged letters to former associates, begging for sabotage funds, calls to distant relatives, seeking loans for revenge plots. All monitored, all impotent, all evidence of a man unwilling to accept his irrelevance. "He's never going to stop hating us," Madison observed after another intercepted threat. "Hatred requires energy better spent building," I replied. "Let him exhaust himself against walls he created." The rebuilding continued across every aspect of operations. Where Dad had ruled through fear, we led through inspiration. Where he'd hoarded credit, we shared recognition. Where he'd created dependence, we fostered independence. 6 months into the rebuilding, something remarkable happened. 3 of Dad's former mistresses approached us with a proposal. They'd connected through the trial, finding solidarity in shared manipulation. Now they wanted to contribute to healing. "We were part of the problem," Sandra Kim acknowledged. "Accepting his money for silence enabled continued abuse. We want to establish a fund supporting employees he harassed who couldn't afford to speak up." Jennifer Barnes added, "Some of us were victims, some opportunists, most a combination, but we all have resources he provided that could serve better purposes." Their fund eventually supported 17 former employees in launching their own businesses. Women and men who'd been driven out by Dad's toxicity now competed fairly in the marketplace. Some became our suppliers, coming full circle from victims to partners. The Innovation Center's first anniversary approached with anticipation. We'd promised transparency about results, and delivery day arrived. Madison presented the numbers to packed auditoriums and live stream audiences. Patents filed, 237. Jobs created, 892. Environmental impact, 40% reduction in waste, 60% decrease in energy consumption. Employee satisfaction, 96% positive. Revenue growth, 73% year over year. But numbers only tell part of the story. Madison continued. The real measures are marriages saved because financial stress decreased. Children who know their parents' work has meaning. Communities thriving because local business thrives. Dignity restored, potential realized, futures secured. The applause felt different from recognition Dad had craved. This was appreciation for collective achievement, not individual aggrandizement. Everyone clapping had contributed to the success they celebrated. That evening, as employees and families enjoyed the anniversary party, I found myself in Dad's former office, now a communal meeting space. His imposing desk had been replaced by modular furniture that encouraged collaboration. His wall of personal accolades had become a rotating display of employee achievements. Connor found me there holding 2 cups of coffee. Thinking about him. Thinking about us, I corrected. Who we might have been if he'd been different. Who we became because he wasn't. You think we're better for the struggle? I think we're conscious of our choices because we've seen unconscious cruelty's consequences. That awareness is gift wrapped in trauma. Madison joined us, completing our unlikely triumvirate. 3 children of Robert Whitfield who'd chosen everything he'd rejected. In the building he'd built on others' backs, we stood on our own feet, lifting others as we rose. Year 1 down, Madison said, raising her coffee cup. Think we can keep this up? Only one way to find out. I echoed my earlier words. Keep building while holding tight to what matters. We toasted to that, to building, to holding, to mattering. The rebuilding wasn't complete because rebuilding never truly ends. It just evolves one choice at a time, one day at a time, one person at a time. In federal prison, a bitter man counted days while we made days count. The difference between destruction and construction, written in every decision, every innovation, every life improved by choosing creation over control. The empire was rebuilt. Now it was time to see how high principles could rise. The International Manufacturing Coalition's annual summit in Chicago had never seen anything like it. 5,000 industry leaders gathered in the convention center's main ballroom waiting for the CEO of the Year announcement. The betting money was on established giants leaders of corporations that measured success in centuries, not years. This year's recipient, the IMC president announced, represents a paradigm shift in American manufacturing. From the ashes of traditional authoritarianism, they've built something revolutionary, a company that proves profitability and principles are partners, not opponents. Madison squeezed my hand as he continued. Apex Industries' CEO has transformed not just a company, but an entire conversation about what business can be. Ladies and gentlemen, Aubrey Whitfield. The walk to that podium felt like crossing decades. In the audience, I saw faces that mapped our journey. Thomas Chen, whose trust had started everything, beaming like a proud uncle. Janet Morrison, tears streaming down her face, finally witnessing recognition of values she'd championed for 35 years. Our employees filled 3 tables, cheering with abandon that violated conventional corporate behavior. 5 years ago, I began voice steady despite the magnitude of this moment. I sat in a Philadelphia coffee shop with a choice: accept the slow death of my family's company under toxic leadership, or build something better. I chose building, but I didn't build alone. I told our story honestly, the family betrayal, the secret company, the dramatic revelation. But more importantly, I shared what we'd learned. That fear-based leadership was expensive inefficiency. That innovation thrived in transparency. That treating workers as partners rather than parts created exponential returns. Robert Whitfield taught through negative example. I continued seeing some audience members shift uncomfortably. Many had their own Roberts to reckon with. He showed us exactly how not to run a company. His failure became our blueprint for success reversed. The speech went viral within hours, not for its critique of traditional management, but for its hope. Young professionals shared clips with captions like, "This is the future I want to build." Established executives quietly ordered reviews of their own practices. Business schools requested transcripts for updated curricula. But the real moment came during the presentation itself. Thomas Chen took the stage revealing something he'd kept secret for 5 years. "I didn't just invest in Apex Industries because Aubrey had a good business plan. I invested because at 27 she had the courage to apologize for her father's behavior, something he never did in 30 years of business." He turned to the audience. "She didn't owe me that apology, but she offered it anyway. That told me everything about the leader she'd become. Today, Odyssey Automotive doesn't just buy from Apex. We're exclusive partners in developing next-generation sustainable transport, because principles are profitable when practiced with purpose." The standing ovation lasted so long security grew nervous, but I barely heard it, overwhelmed by the validation of choices that had felt like leaps into darkness. We'd jumped and built wings on the way down, discovering flight was possible after all. The celebration afterward revealed the true scope of our impact. CEOs of competing firms approached with collaboration proposals. Investors offered funding for expansion. Universities wanted to establish research partnerships. The business world had noticed that our experiment was succeeding spectacularly. Marcus Williams pulled me aside, pride evident in his weathered face. "You've exceeded even my highest expectations. But success brings new challenges. Every innovative company faces the moment when principles meet pressure. Stay vigilant." His warning proved prescient when Monday brought coordinated attacks on multiple fronts. A mysterious, concerned citizens group filed environmental lawsuits despite our exceeding every standard. Anonymous complaints triggered labor investigations, though our workers were industry's best treated. Suddenly, suppliers faced unexpected delays fulfilling our orders. "Someone's organizing against us," David Park reported during our emergency meeting. "The patterns are too synchronized for coincidence." Investigation revealed the source, a consortium of traditional manufacturers who saw our practices as threats to their exploitation models. If workers elsewhere learned about our profit sharing, they might demand similar treatment. If transparency became expected, opacity couldn't hide misconduct. "So we're too successful?" Connor asked incredulously. "They're attacking because we're proving their excuse is invalid." "Exactly," Madison confirmed. "Every quarter we thrive undermines their claims that treating workers well is unsustainable. We're not just competition, we're contradiction to their core beliefs." The attacks intensified. Hackers attempted breaching our systems, finding them secured by employees who actually cared about protecting their company. Corporate spies applied for positions easily identified by workers who recognized the difference between genuine interest and ulterior motives. The breakthrough came from unexpected source. One of the attacking CEO's daughters, Rebecca Thornton, reached out privately. She'd been following our story since the wedding disaster, seeing in Madison's rebellion inspiration for her own struggles with inherited expectations. "My father spends more energy fighting you than improving his own company," she revealed during a clandestine meeting. "He's terrified that if his employees learn about your profit sharing, they'll organize. Here's everything about their plans." The intelligence she provided was invaluable, not for counterattack, but for preparation. When the labor investigations arrived, our documentation was impeccable. Environmental inspectors found facilities that exceeded rather than met standards. Every attack bounced off preparations, leaving attackers looking petty. But we went further than defense. Madison proposed radical transparency, live streaming our entire operation for a week. Let anyone watch any aspect. Production floors, board meetings, financial planning. Show the world we have nothing to hide. The board resisted. Initially, competitive intelligence was real concern. But Connor's argument swayed them. Competitors can copy our methods, but not our culture. Let them see what we do. They still won't understand why it works. The live stream week transformed everything. Millions watched mundane manufacturing become fascinating through the lens of dignity. Comments flooded in from workers worldwide, seeing possibilities they'd never imagined. Orders increased 40% as consumers chose products made with principles. More importantly, employees at traditional manufacturers started asking uncomfortable questions. If Apex could share profits, why couldn't their employers? If transparency was possible there, what was being hidden here? The consortium's attacks had backfired spectacularly, drawing attention to exactly what they'd hoped to suppress. The phone call came on a Thursday that would change everything again. Miss Whitfield. This is the White House. The president would like to discuss your manufacturing model as potential framework for national policy. The visit to Washington felt surreal, walking halls of power not as lobbyists seeking favors, but as practitioners sharing successes. Cabinet members took notes as I explained how treating workers as partners rather than costs had transformed productivity. Economists challenged assumptions while I provided data they couldn't dispute. You're suggesting fundamental reimagining of corporate structures, the Treasury Secretary observed. I'm reporting what actually works, I corrected. Theory is what traditional models claim. Practice is what we've proven. Workers with ownership stakes create better products. Transparency reduces costly oversight. Dignity drives productivity more than fear ever could. The policy discussions continued for months, with Apex becoming unofficial laboratory for progressive business practices. Not everyone appreciated this elevation. Dad, watching from federal prison, sent increasingly unhinged letters about his communist daughter destroying capitalism. Actually, Connor told reporters who asked about the accusation, "We're saving capitalism by proving it works better when everyone benefits. Our father confused exploitation with economics. We're just better at math." The international recognition peaked when Oslo called. The Global Business Ethics Award had never gone to an American company, Nordic businesses, usually dominating with their stakeholder models. But Apex Industries had proven American business could evolve beyond shareholder primacy. Standing in that Norwegian ceremony hall, I thought about the journey from a coffee shop conversation to global recognition. Madison and Connor flanked me as I accepted the award on behalf of every employee who'd chosen hope over history. This recognition belongs to everyone who believed business could be force for good. I said crystal trophy reflecting lights like promises kept. To workers who trusted new leadership after suffering under old. To customers who chose products made with principles. To competitors who adapted rather than attacked. Change is collective, not individual. Mom attended the ceremony, her first public appearance since the trial. She looked radiant, not with expensive treatments, but with genuine peace. "You've built what I could only dream," she said afterward. "Proof that power doesn't require poison." "We built what you preserved for us to build," Madison replied. "Your patience gave us the chance." That evening, Oslo's business leaders hosted a reception where the real work happened. Scandinavian companies wanted partnerships. European unions sought consultation. Asian manufacturers explored licensing our innovations. What started as family drama in small-town America was reshaping global conversations about corporate responsibility. 5 years. Thomas Chen marveled, finding me on the reception's balcony. From startup to global influence in 5 years. Even I didn't predict this trajectory. "You predicted we'd succeed," I reminded him. "I predicted you'd build a good company. You've built a movement." He gestured at the gathered leaders below. "Every person here is rethinking fundamental assumptions because you proved alternatives possible. That's legacy beyond any balance sheet." The flight home carried special cargo, not just awards, but partnerships that would spread our practices globally. Madison sketched expansion plans while Connor designed adaptation frameworks for different cultures and contexts. We were no longer just running a company. We were seeding transformation. Back at Apex headquarters, employees had decorated everything in celebration. A banner reading, "Ethics Award winners work here," stretched across the production floor. The pride in their faces was worth more than any trophy. Janet Morrison, now our Chief Innovation Officer at 65, captured the moment perfectly. Robert Whitfield spent his life chasing recognition that meant nothing. You've earned recognition that changes everything. That night, reviewing 5 years of transformation, I pulled up Dad's original dismissal of Apex as another venture capital play that will fail within a year. We'd survived 5 times his prediction, grown beyond his comprehension, and proven every assumption wrong. But more than corporate success, we'd achieved human victory. 300 original Whitfield employees still worked with us now as partners rather than pawns. Hundreds more had joined, drawn by dignity rather than just paychecks. Families had stability, communities had support, an entire industry was evolving because we'd shown evolution was possible. The phoenix had risen from ashes Dad created. Now it was teaching others to fly. The ribbon stretched across the entrance of the Whitfield Apex Innovation Center 5 years after Dad's empire had crumbled into the foundation for something magnificent. Spring sunshine warmed the gathered crowd. Employees, partners, community members, and skeptics converted to believers. Where Dad's old factory had manufactured parts through fear, we'd built a cathedral to human potential. Today isn't just about cutting ribbon. I addressed the assembly, my voice carrying across the plaza. It's about weaving new fabric for American manufacturing. Every thread represents someone who chose creation over criticism, building over breaking, hope over history. Madison stood beside me, our Chief Technology Officer, whose innovations had revolutionized sustainable production. Her genius, dismissed by Dad as lucky genetics, had generated 17 patents that made manufacturing cleaner, faster, and more profitable. Connor flanked my other side as Second Chance's foundation, having placed over 200 forgotten children into futures they deserved. 5 years ago, this ground held a factory built on others' bent backs. I continued. Today it supports a structure where everyone stands tall, where innovation isn't limited by title, where success is shared, not hoarded, where the janitor's idea is valued equally with the engineer's. The crowd responded with applause that felt like validation of every difficult choice. Among them, I spotted faces that told our story. Thomas Chen, whose trust had launched everything. Janet Morrison, whose dignity had survived decades of diminishment. Marcus Williams, whose mentorship had shaped raw anger into refined purpose. Mom emerged from the crowd, her presence still commanding attention despite years of chosen invisibility. At 70, she moved with the confidence of someone who'd finally lived for herself. Her travels had taken her across 6 continents, studying how different cultures approach business and balance. Today, she'd returned to see what her patient destruction had enabled. Patricia Whitfield will share a few words. I announced, stepping aside for the woman whose strategic patience had made this moment possible. She approached the microphone with measured steps, the crowd falling silent with anticipation. Mom rarely spoke publicly, making each word precious. 35 years ago, I married a man who confused cruelty for strength. She began, voice clear and unashamed. I stayed not from weakness but from strategy, protecting what I could while documenting what I couldn't prevent. My daughters achieved what I could only preserve, transformation of poison into medicine. She paused, scanning the crowd with eyes that had seen too much, yet still held hope. The old Whitfield manufacturing died because it deserved to. Built on fear, it collapsed from rot. But from that collapse, these remarkable women built something. Fear could never create a community of mutual success. Her gaze found Madison, Connor, and me. To my children, all 3 of you, thank you for becoming who I knew you could be, despite everything arranged against you. You've given me the only gift that matters, proof that patterns can break, that cycles can end, that children can exceed their inheritance exponentially. She stepped back, tears flowing freely as the crowd erupted. This woman who'd orchestrated our father's downfall through patience rather than passion had lived to see her strategy's ultimate success. Madison took the microphone next, her presentation style polished by years of explaining innovation to those who feared change. Let me show you what principles made profitable actually look like. The screens around the plaza lit up with 5 years of data. Employment from 312 to 4,500 with 0 layoffs. Revenue, 800% growth with 50% flowing to employee owners. Innovation, 340 patents all co-owned with inventors. Environmental impact carbon, negative for 2 consecutive years. Community investment, $37 million in local programs. Employee satisfaction, 98% highest in manufacturing history. But beyond numbers, Madison continued, look at faces. The screens shifted to employee testimonials. Production worker Maria Gonzalez shared how profit sharing had funded her daughter's medical degree. Engineer James Park explained how innovation rewards had enabled him to care for aging parents without financial fear. Dozens of stories painted a picture of business as force for human flourishing. Connor presented next, the half-brother we'd never known existed now, integral to our success. The Second Chances Foundation has placed 217 forgotten children into educational programs. 63 have already graduated, many joining companies, inspired by Apex's model. Every investment in discarded potential pays dividends in realized dreams. The ceremony's highlight came when we unveiled the building's cornerstone. Instead of Dad's name etched in granite proclaiming ownership, we'd installed a digital display rotating through every employee's name. 3,000 contributors cycling through acknowledgement, updating automatically as new people joined our community. No single name should dominate, I explained. Success this profound requires every hand, every mind, every heart working together. We built this. We own this. We'll grow this together. The tours that followed revealed 5 floors of revolutionary workspace, open labs where anyone could prototype ideas, quiet rooms for restoration and reflection, childcare facilities allowing parents to work without worry, a cafeteria serving free meals sourced from local farms we supported, every detail designed to honor humanity while advancing productivity. The top floor held special significance. Dad's executive suite, reimagined as communal space for big dreams. Where he'd hidden behind closed doors, glass walls created transparency. Where he'd hoarded credit achievement walls, celebrated every contributor. Where he'd schemed destruction makers, created wonders. This is unsustainable fantasy, a familiar voice interrupted. Harrison Sterling Jr. had attended, still bitter about his failed acquisition, still preaching traditional exploitation. When the economy contracts, you'll abandon these ideals for survival. Actually, David Park intervened with quiet confidence. We modeled severe recession scenarios. Our distributed ownership structure makes us more resilient, not less. When everyone has stakes, everyone fights together rather than abandoning ship. Besides, Janet Morrison added with satisfaction, earned through decades of proving doubters wrong, we've survived the worst economy possible, one where human dignity was considered unaffordable. Everything else is improvement. The crowd chuckled, Harrison's disruption becoming inadvertent comedy. He stormed off privilege, threatened by proof that exploitation wasn't necessary for success. As afternoon stretched toward evening, the formal program concluded, but celebration continued. Families explored facilities their loved ones had helped design. Children played in spaces their parents' work had funded. Communities saw investments returning as promises kept rather than taxes extracted. I found myself on the roof garden, a space Madison had insisted on including. For perspective, she'd argued, to remember we're building up, not just out. The view encompassed our entire journey. In the distance, the federal prison where Dad served his 25th year. Closer, the original Whitfield factory, now our research facility. Surrounding us, the community that had grown because we'd grown with, rather than despite them. Any regrets? Connor asked, joining me among the sustainable vegetables feeding our cafeteria. About Dad, none. He made his choices. I paused, considering deeper truth. About the pain required to get here sometimes, but pain was going to exist either way. At least ours had purpose. Madison arrived with champagne, her wedding ring catching sunset she'd married for love, not mergers to a teacher who valued her mind over her inheritance. "Mom's looking for you. Apparently there's one more surprise." We found her in the memorial garden, a space I hadn't known was being created. Plaques honored everyone, harmed by the old regime employees, dismissed careers destroyed, dreams deferred. But the centerpiece made us all catch breath. Robert J. Whitfield, the stone read, 1952 20, builder of structures, teacher through contrast. May his children's success provide the redemption he couldn't find himself. "He's not dead," Connor observed, confused. "His way of thinking is," Mom replied quietly. "This commemorates that death while hoping for the man's eventual understanding. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, but it allows forward movement." We stood in complicated silence, 3 children and 1 wife of a man whose cruelty had catalyzed transformation. The memorial wasn't vindictive, it was honest. Dad had built, he had taught. His legacy would be our success despite him. As darkness fell, the Innovation Center glowed with sustainable lighting, a beacon of possibility in a landscape too often darkened by compromise. Employees headed home to families they could support with dignity. Communities rested easier, knowing corporate neighbor meant partner, not predator. The letter from Dad arrived the next day, forwarded through prison channels. His handwriting had deteriorated, age and irrelevance taking tolls that power had once postponed. "I read about your ceremony," he wrote. "Your success built on my failure. Your principles mocking my practices. You think you've won, but I gave you the fire to forge with. My cruelty created your compassion. My failure fueled your success. You're welcome." Even now, he claimed credit for what he'd tried to prevent. But reading deeper, I heard something new. Not quite acknowledgement, but absence of threat. The ranting about revenge had faded. The promises of destruction had dissolved. What remained was an old man reconciling with obsolescence. I shared the letter with Madison and Connor. We read it together, finding humor where once we'd have felt hurt. "Should we respond?" Connor asked. "We already have." Madison gestured toward the window where our success spoke louder than words. "Every day we succeed ethically is response to his cynicism. Every employee we elevate answers his oppression." I added, "Every innovation we share refutes his hoarding. Our entire existence is the response." That evening, I stood before 200 female entrepreneurs at our monthly mentorship gathering. They'd come seeking wisdom about building businesses, scaling success, balancing demands. What I offered was simpler and more complex. "Build something worth building," I told them. "Not for revenge or recognition, but for the right to look in mirrors without flinching. Success is hollow if it requires hollowing out others. Profit is pyrrhic if purchased with principles." The questions came eagerly: how to handle discrimination, when to compromise, whether ethical business truly scaled. I answered with 5 years of evidence, scars transformed to wisdom experience, expensive but educational. "The greatest revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you," I concluded. "It's building something so magnificent they finally understand what they missed by choosing cruelty over creation. Some, like my father, may never understand, but their incomprehension doesn't diminish our achievements." The applause felt like passing torches, each woman carrying flame back to their own challenges. They'd build their own innovations, fight their own battles, prove their own points. The legacy was spreading beyond our walls. Later, alone in my office, not Dad's old fortress, but a collaborative space I'd designed, I pulled out the photo from my college graduation. The 3 of us, young and uncertain, flanked by parents we couldn't yet see clearly. That girl in the photo had dreamed of making her father proud. She'd believed success meant earning his approval, that achievement would finally make her enough. How naive, how necessary, how human. I'd learned pride couldn't be earned from those incapable of giving it. but it could be built through actions aligned with values, success measured in lives improved rather than wealth accumulated. The girl in the photo had wanted to matter to someone who didn't know how to value what mattered. The woman holding it had learned to matter by creating value for those who'd been similarly dismissed. The failing business he'd mockingly given me had become a billion-dollar testament to everything he'd mocked. The daughter deemed too stupid for engineering had revolutionized an industry. The wife considered too weak to leave had orchestrated his downfall with strategic brilliance. The son he'd hidden had become integral to our success. As I locked the office and headed home, I thought about legacy, not inherited but created. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Competitors would attack. Markets would fluctuate. Employees would need support. Communities would require investment. The work never ended because transformation was process, not product. But tonight, walking through facilities filled with hope rather than fear, passing workers who smiled rather than cringed, I felt the satisfaction of promises kept. We'd taken a failing business and made it flourish. We'd taken a toxic culture and made it nurturing. We'd taken family trauma and transformed it to triumph. The daughter he'd deemed a failure had given him the only legacy that would survive redemption through our success. The empire he'd built on others' backs now stood on principles that elevated everyone. The name Whitfield, once synonymous with exploitation, now meant innovation, integrity, inclusion. In his prison cell, an old man might rage against his irrelevance or finally recognize his errors. That was his journey to make or miss. Ours was continuing building, growing, proving daily that business could be both profitable and principled, successful, and sustainable, powerful, and kind. To everyone who's ever been dismissed, diminished, or destroyed by those who confused cruelty for strength, rise, build. Prove them wrong, not through revenge, but through results. Create the world they said was impossible. Live the life they said you didn't deserve. Success isn't inherited, it's earned through courage to reject what you're given and create what you deserve. What would you build if you stopped accepting the limitations others placed on you? What could you create if you believed in your worth, despite those who didn't? What legacy would you leave if you chose transformation over tradition? The only inheritance worth having is the one you give yourself the courage to become who you're meant to be, despite who others expected you to become. Your story is waiting to be written. Pick up the pen. The world needs what you'll build when you finally believe you can build it. Thank you for sharing this journey with us. May your own transformations be as powerful as your dreams are bold. Remember, the best revenge against those who underestimated you is a life so magnificent they finally understand their mistake. Like, share, comment, and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Tell us, what failing inheritance will you transform into thriving legacy? Until next time, keep building, keep growing, keep proving that from the ashes of others' cruelty, we can create communities of compassion. The Phoenix isn't just a myth, it's a method. Rise accordingly.